Basis 3 Part 6, the British investigators at the Rendlesham Forest UFO Events of December 1980 and subsequent events. Here we're joined with Steadicam, courtesy of Matthew Williams, away back in summer 2006, with Brenda Butler and Peter Parish, discussing the events and their research. The original media in camera 2 has not survived these long years since this was shot, but this is it, the walkthrough with Brenda Butler and Peter Parish.
I think if you ask your ETs, they must probably pick us up and take us down there. Some of the ETs carry some stuff for us, you know, in the sheep and yep. Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's sort of led there, wasn't it?
Well, we were led there,
yeah. So,
I mean, did you at that time think about connecting it with Colonel Holt's area and?
Well, when we went in there, in my mind, I felt a real strong feeling that this is something special. This bit of the forest would be ideal for something to reenact a scene of that time. I mean, it's funny we stumbled across them stakes later on when we walked out.
Yeah, it was strange.
And I sort of, you know, what's this doing here? And then you looked, and it came to me just looking at that tree and that scrape coming down the tree. I thought, just, you know, this is something's landed here. I said to you that, man, Brenda, something's landed here. So I thought it was weird. I thought, and when we took the photographs and had a look at it in the same site, it just ties in with the area in the background. So.
But how do you tie in with what happened over here at Colonel Holt's area and?
Well, that ties in with another event, but it seems like it's in line with the other. It seems like it's either a flight path of whatever it was came across here, dropped something off, and then it continued and landed and got into trouble. It might have got into trouble, so
Well, what about Higgins and his cows then? What about what he saw?
Yeah, well, that came in from over.
What about what Sheepshank said?
And there's been a bit of craft came over his way somewhere, hovering over the trees, wasn't there?
Yeah, but
big
don't
silver
forget
disc.
what he saw come over. He saw sort of like a rocket shape. He said.
Yeah, big mothercraft type thing.
Yeah.
Because the lady here at the farm, the little girl, she came out and she said that's so big or something. That
it could have flattened the forest.
Flattened the forest. So it must have been a huge craft.
She said that was silver.
Yeah. So that may tie in with because Ike that frightened the cows at Ike. Then it came over Greenwell's, didn't it?
Yeah.
Not Greenwell's, Tingbob's.
Yeah.
The other person's place. Yeah.
Sheepshanks.
Sheepshanks, that's the one. And that floated a path over the picnic area, which people said they saw just on the Butley Road there. It was heading this way. So it could have well been the craft that landed over here.
So if it came over Higgins in Ike, and then it came over Sheepshanks down here at Friday Street, then it came over Butley picnic area.
Yes, right.
Then all the people on the road saw it, all the English
on the Butley Road, the people stopped their cars and got out, didn't they, looking over here.
And you've got to remember the people at Woodbridge who saw it.
Yeah.
They saw it.
Yeah. So, and it's all on that same night, though, wasn't it?
It was all on that same night, 27th.
So that could tie in with all the activity in the forest around here as well.
So what about Gordon Levitt then, who lived over at Sedburn? I mean, he saw it, don't forget, but he saw it come along the coast and over.
That's right, yeah. Well, it could be that. Then there's also Batley High Corner. There was a boy, gentleman on a motorbike.
Yeah.
He said there was a triangular craft coming over the road, Batley High Corner, and he said that it's like molten metal was dripping off that.
That's right.
And he could describe it and the lights underneath it and everything. And that was interesting to hear about that one. And then the other gentleman, who was the other chap who actually, there was a person saw on the Snape, near Snape coming this way.
Oh, yeah. There was also a girl saw it, don't forget. Yeah, the girl from Leiston saw it.
That's right,
She was coming from Ipswich, she saw a big white light going.
And the lady I got talking to where I work, she was doing a flower arrangement for the school, and she said she was coming home from Snape direction, heading back to Orford on that road, and she said this bright red light came over the top of her.
Yeah.
And over her car, she was on her own, and all this red hot molten like stuff was dripping down.
That's right.
It's like bits of hot ash.
That's what Holt said.
So like hot ash just dripping, flying, coming down, floating down.
That's what Holt said. He saw coming off at molten lava or something.
And she said,
come off it.
and she said, she said, I just kept driving. It didn't. I asked her, did it affect the car? She said no. It just carried on. She said I just carried on. It didn't stop the car or nothing. But I just carried on. It seems weird. I was a bit frightened. She said, but I just carried on. And that was on that same night.
So basically, I mean, on the 27th, there must have been a load of craft about for people to see white lights over Leiston, Woodbridge, Ike, motherships, you know.
So the whole load of activity this area.
Yeah, spin and craft.
There was the Warnocks at Sudbourne.
That's right.
They saw a bright light coming across. That was one evening when they came home for a dance. I think that was at about 1 o'clock time. They came home about the same time, that time, and they said that this light ball of light sort of came down, it was over towards Orford Island way, and it came in rounds, and then it took off again.
Well, what Gordon Levitt saw over there came from Orford Island, didn't he? That big, and then don't forget the fishermen out to sea. Around about that time, they saw loads of green lights.
Yeah,
there was a little boy who went home and told his mum about the green light coming out of a big dust cloud, and that came down and went out onto the sea.
So there's a lot tying in with that same time, isn't it?
But all different.
Yeah, all different.
Because we've got motherships, we've got rotating craft.
Yeah.
We've got the balls of light, the big balls of light.
Yeah.
We've got the red discs.
Yeah.
We've got the green lights coming down out of the dust cloud and going onto the sea, all around at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, so there must be a lot going on.
And do you reckon this thing that landed in the sea, this like capsule? Because I said your photograph, you got a photograph of it, and it looked, and I said that looks like a space shuttle nose cone, and it's a nose cone. It's been on the seabed. You can see where it's been. The salt water has been affecting the actual tiles of it, the actual re-entry. I'm sure that's because it ties in with the space shuttle nose cone. Because I looked up on the internet, and definitely was a nose cone. So, were they trying to land something here as well at the same time?
Well, if what the 67th picked up out of the sea, that was the big bird capsules or whatever they were after, the satellite they were after. I mean, that would have had parachutes on anyway, because as soon as it hit the sea, the parachutes are released anyway, so it don't sink.
Because we had also, Hoathly Bay was put on alert as well, wasn't it?
It was.
The prison. So why were they to evacuate the prison?
Right, well, I read an article about that, and that said that if the big bird had been dropping capsules, down in the sea, radioactive, and that is absolutely massive. It is really, and it's very, very heavy. And if it had to come down like on Holsey, or if it had to come down in the village of Butler or Ike or anything, they'd need somewhere to take the people immediately, because that would have really harmed and hurt a lot of people, maybe even kill some people. So they had to have somewhere in the locality. Yeah.
Do you reckon that the space shuttle was trying to land at Woodbridge? Because they can land. They reckon that was big enough to land if an emergency.
That is a crash rescue.
Yeah.
For the 67th, that's why they were based there.
Yeah, I mean, if this
anyway.
nose cone what they recovered, which you got some photographs of, had been covered off the sea at the time. If this space shuttle was coming into land here at Woodbridge, and perhaps it didn't make it, it broke up, got some problems. So this might have been what the alert was about. Some of it, you know, the evacuation or something, because it's in the flight line. I mean, Hoathly Prison is in the flight line, really, of coming in from to I expect they may have to make its approach from a fair way away as well.
But then the alert could have been because of the Cold War, and if that's true what Karen says about the Russian Tupolev coming in.
Yeah, that could have been. Yeah, that could have been something to do with it.
The trees and that.
So I mean, so there's quite a bit of information there, which.
So I mean, if you think about it, Karen's got two stories, because one she's talking about the 67th going rescue and the satellite out of the sea and putting it in the aircraft. Yeah. And then she's talking about the Russian Tupolev, isn't she, coming in, and they want to come and land in at Woodbridge. Right. So you've got two stories from Karen anyway.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because I mean, it makes it a little bit more richer story. I mean, what was going on here? There seems to be a lot more than just the light scene in the forest. I mean, there seemed to be military involvement, and also there's a little bit of deception going on, I think, as well. They haven't told people everything, and Colonel Holt, and then when you asked him when he was here and asked about the back gate, he never come clear about. He said the back gate is East Gate. Yeah. But
there may be a lot of people call that the back gate.
But in 1980, the East Gate was a small, narrow, very short.
Yeah, I know it was.
And
I know.
That isn't the one Barrows went and checked on, because it was locked, and they had to do early checks to the back gate. Yeah. The back gate, he had to do early checks to it to make sure it was locked, stop personnel getting in. Yeah. Now, if it's the East Gate, he calls the back gate, no way would that keep anybody out from the place.
Well, climb over top of it.
Yeah, climb over top.
Yeah,
so
he could.
I know the chap who was in the TA Army, he said the gate at the back gate was the north gate, and he said that was a big steel 9-foot gate. Yeah. That was steel 9 foot, so that time with the gate that Barrows used to check on in the back gate.
Yeah. But then you've got to remember that the emails I've had from Colonel Holt here said, remember the incident outside of the East Gate.
Yeah.
Remember, that just happened outside the East Gate. And then we had them people who were fishing, and they saw all that stuff go on in the woods there, didn't they? Just outside the East Gate.
But another thing I found also, but it's interesting, the stakes that were found in Area 1 with the landing site we found, there was more stakes further along towards the back gate in the forest. Same sort of stakes, same distance and everything. Now, what does that indicate? Something else has been coming down the forest there? Something else they've been surveying? There's more than one crafter involved that night, and I think there are other ones settled down on the perimeter of the fence or in the woods. They may have been waiting for this other craft to be repaired. It could be a possibility. There is actually another site there near the back gate where this thing came down.
It could have been the track where they put the posts. It could have been the track.
It could have been where it came.
Where they were tracking it, where they came through.
Could have well been, but they're definitely staked off areas, and they're the same as what was in Area 1. So they've been surveying these areas for perhaps radiation, checking for radiation, which is fascinating.
But we found some more of those posts further up though, didn't we?
Yeah.
In another part of the forest.
Yeah. So there could have well been quite a lot of activity.
Mind you, where we found them other stakes, right, in that other part of the forest, weren't far off where you said them TA soldiers.
No, that's right.
Had seen that craft come down.
That's right, yeah. Just down there.
That's right.
Yeah,
so really, where we found them other stakes, you ought to go there with your divining rods. And
most probably pick up some sort of feet mark.
Yeah.
I mean, there was, from the back gate, I mean, Barrows did see lights in the forest.
Yeah.
So it could well tied in with the events just locally around there as well, the back gate.
I think there has been a big cover-up. I don't think maybe Colonel Holt's covering up things. Maybe, I mean, he did generally see lights in the forest. He's always said
what I found fascinating though is when we went to the control tower and met Colonel Holt and Jim Penniston.
Yeah.
I said to Jim, hi Jim, I know a colleague of yours because I used to know Colin Coffey. He was on that night. I mean, he was head of security control on that night, and I knew he worked at the base here as a staff sergeant Coffey. I mean, I won't use him as any sort of evidence, but I'm just saying I knew Colin, and there was I saw Penniston, and I said, Jim, I knew you went to college of yours. I said, Colin, and he went red in the face and disappeared. He hurried out because he was in security, and he knew Colin very well for this incident, and I just felt he was really uneasy. I knew him.
I still think you should have got in touch with him and asked him his side of the story.
Who, Colin Coffey?
Colin Coffey, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I emailed him about UFO stuff. I never got any feedback back on it. I just said I was interested in UFOs.
Did Georgina Bruni speak to him? His name's in her book.
Yeah, I don't know if she got hold of. She may have had I don't know if she got hold of him, but I could try again, I suppose, to see if he would respond. I suppose if it's a military issue, they've got to be very, they don't want to talk about it.
One of the things about the one which Colonel Holt's area, because when Dot and I first come up here, the fence was all broken down. There's a broken down tree.
That's interesting.
Just up there, right? And the fence was all broken down. And they reckon that's where the UFO went up, or where the craft went up, hit the tree, before that went into the field over there.
So did this... If this thing went in the crater, was it a disc type thing that bounced? It skimmed like a thing, or hit the ground and come up again, and then went back and nosedived into the ground?
Well, it could have done.
So it could have been covering at quite a speed that's gone in the ground. So it might have skimmed like.
I mean, if you think about the dog walker going up there, right, and you're in a hurry and you see lights, you see people messing about, and you just see something. And how do we know it didn't come down like that? And what he was seeing was the side of it.
Could well be. Could well be.
He said that was like a missile shape, but he was doing it really quickly.
Yeah.
And also the guys there were covering it over.
Yeah.
So how do we know that if you just see something really quickly and you want to make your getaway, you just look at it, don't you?
He could have seen it edgeways on, because he wouldn't have seen it if it was disc shape. He wouldn't have seen it if he'd seen it edgeway on, just like a missile type. He'd either described it as something silvery.
That's right.
So if that did actually land there and stuck in the ground or crashed into the woods
but
there.
They reckon that the fence was broken down up there because the guys ran over top of it when they were chasing this light over the field, and that they ran over top of the fence and they broke the fence down.
Well, Holt's type doesn't seem to tight. I know it's been mingled about with and been chopped, and
That was 4 hours long.
4 hours long, but it doesn't. It goes from. On the tape, it definitely sounds like the first bit where it comes from Area 1, but the second half, he says the animals in the field are going crazy, or the farm.
It's been edited out.
Well, this ties up with that bit there, down around this area somewhere. So, was he was he already prepared? Was Holt already investigating or waiting for these craft to come in? Perhaps he knew they're in one was dodgy or had problems, and perhaps he was waiting for them to come into the area. So he might have been on the edge of the woods, and he could see these. Well, this looks weird, and the lights coming down. These things could be flying around with their lot of drone type disc crafts underneath them, and of course they would look at an eye winking at them. I mean, if you've got these disc type craft and they've got light on them.
You've got to remember that when we interviewed Chuck Holt, he said to us that he'd seen all his dad's UFO reports that he'd done on that night and that. And when his dad was in America, he found them and he looked through them, looked through his tape and everything. And he said that it was a classified UFO.
Yes.
It was a classified craft.
It just seems that this tape is not, it's bits and pieces. It's not, and it's not in order. It seems like it's been...
Well, 17 minutes long, and that originally was 4 hours long. So, but I mean, Colonel Holt told Dalton May himself that had been cut about and been chopped, because there's a lot of stuff on there that couldn't be reported, that couldn't be released. It's
not as clear as what, when you listen to it. It's certainly bitty, and the situation where you start going from one, the farmyard, I mean, there's no farmyard that way, but Area 1 does tie in with Area 1 where he was examining the trees.
Don't forget, he said when they were chasing the lights across the field, past the farmer's house, and they fell into this ditch with water in it. Well, there's a ditch over there.
Well, there is a ditch, so part of that may head in that way. So they could be following something that way.
And then if they went up on the hill and looked out to the river, they would have seen the lighthouse plus the lighthouse buoy, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but it's so far away. I mean, you go and wandering across there, you'll be exhausted, and you got to go through quite deep old
they only had one
ditches.
torch and no coats.
The other thing I was saying about, they could have gone from Area 1, they could have been in Area 1, seeing lights in the forest, they could have followed across the farmer's field heading towards Bentwaters, because there is a field that way, and there's also a farm towards Bentwaters.
Where we saw the black cat.
Yeah, because they actually talked about seeing lights beaming, I think he mentioned somewhere about seeing lights beaming down over Bentwaters. I think there was a mention of something lights also coming down over the Bentwaters, seeing lights beaming down.
Well, he said about the lights beaming down on the...
Because you could still see
on the missile, the weapons storage area, didn't he?
What, on Bentwaters?
No, he said Woodbridge.
Woodbridge, yeah.
He said Woodbridge.
So you could see that from where he was. I mean, if he was down here, I don't think you could see the weapons storage area from here. You may do if you're up higher on the ground, up higher ground.
What about the man who saw the little brown monks?
Yeah, when was this?
Mr. Jolly, remember? He saw the little brown monks.
Right, what time was that? When was that then?
He saw them in about 79, again in 80, didn't he?
Oh, right.
He saw them round the Woodbridge weapons storage area, didn't he? Because he thought that was strange.
The other thing about Bentwaters, there was an incident happened just in the woods in the forest there, weren't there? There was about the same time? There was firemen called to a fire or something, or...
Oh no, that was that was the back gate at Bentwaters. Right. There was a guard on duty, and he saw this great big huge ball of fire come towards him. Right. Didn't he? And he called out the fireman because because my friend who was the fireman was telling me the story, weren't he? And he was down here Saturday night, and I asked him again about the story. Yeah. And he said he knew that was over Christmas. He can't swear about the date. Right. But he knew that was over that Christmas because they were called out to.
And that came in and went into the base itself.
That came, and he reckoned the security guard actually had to duck as it came over him. He actually had to duck, but he reckoned that was a fireball.
A red sort of
big red fireball. Wow. Yeah. But when they got there, they couldn't find any signs of it.
And also, what about the old boys who lived nearby near Bentwaters in the forest? And they said
Jim and Rowley.
Yeah, he said there was a lot of activity in the forest just between Bentwaters and
Woodbridge. That was the 27th.
On the 27th.
That was the 27th.
And there was a lot of army in the forest, Americans.
Yeah, a lot of Americans.
And they come and asked him, didn't they? What were they doing out there this time in the morning, early hours?
Well, their television all went off, didn't it? All their television, electric kept flashing on and off. Right. So they came out and wondered what had happened and looked up at their aerial, thought there was a hurricane and stuff going on, and then they saw all these soldiers coming through the forest. Right. And they went out and asked them what they were doing at that time of night, running through the forest. And they said, oh, we're doing an exercise, there's an exercise going on. But they said, they didn't really believe that.
Yeah. Weren't there some deer found dead in the forest? Was that about the same time, or was that later?
That's when Dot and I found all them drugs in that house, weren't they?
Yeah, but didn't somebody come out saying, are you from the official, from the MOD or something?
That was a man who, when we left Rowley and Jim, the old boys, and we went back down the track, we saw this guy standing at the forest, and there was a house on the other side, and we'd just been in the house, and we found all these bags of what we thought were lime, but later on it was in the paper that somebody had been storing drugs there, and the police had raided that. But we went down further, found this guy standing there looking in the forest, and we went over to him and asked him what he was doing. He said, do you know anything about all these dead deer laying around this forest?
Really?
There's quite a lot of dead deer, yeah, and we said no. And we asked him if he knew anything about UFOs or anything landing in the forest, and, that, and he said, are you from the MOD? And we said, no, we're just investigators.
Right.
And he said, oh, that worry me because we found a lot of dead deer laying around the forest.
Deer, so.
Yeah.
Well, that's some time goes. Remember, it
might have been the Yeti.
Was it about a couple, 4 years ago now at Bentwaters? We went round the perimeter fence of that same side.
I found them dead sheep.
Yeah, but with the Campbells had sheep on that field, on the actual Bentwaters site, and we found loads of dead sheep. Sheep just died.
Laying there,
Why were they dying? Because is there radiation in the soil around there? Is it bad? There's lots of dead sheep there.
Yeah, there was. We took photos of them.
Yeah. So I don't think that's very healthy. And that's why they've took the sheep off. They're not having them grazing on anymore.
But I know that a lot of the deer were found dead because the Americans had been shooting them with crossbows. Oh. And I know they laid. Well, in this forest over here, they'd found several deer with crossbows in them.
Wow.
So
yeah, it's just it seems to be very well covered up, and I think people have been information has been given out to different areas, and they're not. You know, I think that's been covered up, and I think. You
know the story that we were given by the gentleman over in that direction about the drug parties, don't you?
Right.
He said that English police came here because of the drug parties.
Right.
Well, that was actually true. I have found out. I did phone some people up and ask them about the drug parties, and actually there was a drug party, but it was New Year's Eve. That was nothing to do with the 26th, 27th or whatever, that was New Year's Eve. And he did actually speak to the police. Right. So when he keeps going on about the drugs party, he's actually talking about New Year's Eve, the Americans in the forest here having a New Year's Eve party.
Yeah. Well, I did get hold of, is it David King?
Yeah.
The British policeman. I did ring him up and asked him about the situation of the 1980. Did he actually go to the landing site? Yeah. He said he was going out to the landing site, and he said he got as far as the forest, and he said he got called away to a robbery at the Otley post office. There was a robbery there, so he said he didn't make it, but his colleague got there. I said apparently he had a look round, but they're very cagey where it was. And also I went and saw Nelson Potter, who was a local forester over at Brumswell, and Nelson was involved in 1980 of the clearing of the trees in the forest, and I had a word with Nelson, and I said, did you actually go to the landing site yourself? He said, yes, I was there. And he said, it's just like been somebody there with a blowtorch and just done it. He said, there could have been anybody with a blowtorch making this not a burnt effect. And I said, whereabouts was this then? He said, well, it's down the track. He said, near, just side the road. He said, going down towards, he's pointing this way, coming this way, down this way. And I said, well, was it any nearer than that? He said, no, that was down in some trees. I can't remember where exactly. So he said he's been there. And Vince Sirkettle, now this is interesting, because I saw Vince on a UFO walk, and I got the picture from George Bruni's book, and I held the book. I said, Vince, I just want to ask you, you said you were there at the UFO. This is interesting. You were actually in this. I said, you were actually in this site and where this UFO landed. I held the book up and showed it to Vince. I said, you were actually. Can you say you were exactly in that picture? Were you there? This land site? Yes, I was. I did see it. I said, before the trees were cut down. You go, yes, I was there. And then I thought, right, if you were there, you must have been in Area 1. And why are you taking everybody down this way?
Yeah, but don't forget, I've got photos of Vince up here.
But why? Yeah, but why is he actually saying he was in that photograph?
Because he didn't know where he was. That's why.
Yeah, but that is Area 1. If he said he was in that.
He didn't know where Area 1 was because he asked me. Because I told him about Area 1. He said, "Where on earth is that? Is it over there?" Didn't he? And I said no. And I told him where it was. He said,
"But don't forget, they're sworn to secrecy, aren't they? The forestry. They can't disclose anything."
He did actually tell us on that walk that he was sworn to secrecy.
Yeah. So you can't get the truth as such. I mean, it's very vague, and they're not really coming out truthfully. I mean, they must have documentations. They've got maps somewhere where actually these things came down. And they've got it. The MOD must know where it is. The military must know where this thing is. It's all been checked, and you'd have it all down on the map. So you'd have an X saying this is where it happened. This is where such and such happened.
But don't forget, I've got a map with Colonel Holt's cross on it. Just take us over there. I've got Chuck, his son, who took us there, and Steve Roberts took us there.
And look what happened. Holt comes back, last couple of years ago? And then he says, oh, No, I must have been wrong. I think I must have put the cross.
Somewhere else.
It's further up, he says.
Yeah,
I think
I know.
it's up on the high. It wasn't quite so far down as this. He said it was up on the higher grounds.
But it couldn't have possibly have landed where he said it was, not the second one.
He said, I think it's in there, but I think you've got to have very fine, very sensitive equipment now to find the radiation. He says. I thought.
Yeah,
oh.
but none of the trees have been damaged there, and all the trees are still standing.
Well, I'd love to
there.
talk to him in Area 1 because I'd like to see his face, and I'd like to say, well, look at this.
He'll come over if you pay for him.
I said, look at this. The pictures match the area. There's radiation here as well. Wow, that's something strange, isn't it?
What
Some
did
weird
he
stuff.
say?
And his tape matched that area, and the measurements were the same.
Yeah.
Radiation, everything.
Well, he said if we paid for him, he'd come over and we'd have a big party in the forest.
Yeah.
Didn't
Well,
he?
perhaps he'll come out with it one day and come out with the truth, you know, because
Yeah, but don't forget, when I phoned up Mildenhall, they said that he'd never ever be able to tell the truth because his pension and everything would be at stake. If anything like it ever happened, nobody'd ever be able to tell the truth.
Yeah, okay. I mean, so if say this was advanced the craft, they have to keep quiet, wouldn't they? If it was.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you got the Blackbird.
Well, they would have done then because one, the Cold War, and one because of you know, Russia, the relationships with Russia. And
the advanced technology from, I mean, like in '62, what the Blackbird first flew from Area 51. I mean, that was a high technology craft then. I mean, but what was flying in 1980? You know, what had they advanced to?
I still think they were the stealth. I still think they had the stealth flying. You know, as experimental aircraft, because what did Dot and I see?
Yeah.
Right, and I was reading the reports of that, and that was a triangular-shaped thing with lights on it. Although that was quiet.
But did I mention when I mentioned to Holt that about this the disc that came over us over here, the track at track 10? I said this made a noise. It carried over, and it went over the top there. So I told it to Holt. He said it wasn't a black helicopter, was it?
Yeah, an invisible
black
helicopter.
Yeah. I thought, well, invisible, no noise.
Yeah, I know. Invisible black helicopter.
I thought, pull the other one. I thought, but
well, a stealth technology, isn't it?
yeah, but the advanced technology I've got now, I dare say they have got. You can't see them now. But if they got the advanced technology, you know, you would just blend in.
Came past Terry and I on Saturday night about 3 o'clock in the morning up there. That came past us, and we actually heard it whiz past us, and that was going.
Oh,
and that was making the noise, and we both heard it.
Yeah.
Because Terry said, "Did you hear that?" I said, "Yeah, I actually did hear that." And you could feel it whistling past you, but there was nothing.
I'd like to got that on the infrared. You might have probably picked up on infrared or something like that.
Yeah, it's after we had that experience.
Because didn't Holt say to you about infrared? He said, "Have you tried infrared?"
Yeah, he did. Try
now,
infrared.
Everything what we've caught
you can
down
pick
here.
them up on infrared, he said,
yeah, but everything we've got now on camera and the infrared, is infrared. With the ETs, we've got the rods, streakers, things come through. The Yeti shaped thing come walking in the camera, all on infrared.
It's all on infrared.
So there's another dimension. There's another dimension out there, isn't there?
Yeah,
another dimension, and it's still going on, and there's still things happening.
But what we've been told by you know, this forest is built on a dimensional
pathways or whatever it is. Yeah.
And you know, other people see this is a forest within a forest. You know, it's a magical forest, and all things happen here because of the energies, the ley lines, you know, the dimensions.
Yeah, we're still getting things happening. We're still getting stones dropping down, warm stones dropping down.
Hot stones too.
Yeah, hot stones drop down beside you.
That's right.
Like a
every
gift.
time we're down here.
Orb lights, bright lights, red lights. Saw one the other night. Just streak across a lovely red. It just went like that in a straight line, very sort of slowly but deliberately, and then just stop and disappear.
I'll tell you one thing. This track 10 seems to be the centre of attention most of the time now.
Yeah.
It seems to be wherever anything happens, that's here on track 10.
Yeah.
For some reason.
It seems to be focused.
It's
focused
on here. Yeah, it's really weird. Really weird.
I think sometime there'll be some more information come out about this, and somebody will come forward. As I think a lot of people are worrying about their own retirements and things.
We tried to get the American government together, plus the British MOD together and everything. And Harry Harris and some other people put in and asked them to come together in a high court to talk about this and to release the truth. And the military, military government said no, they wouldn't allow it. There's no way would they allow it.
Well, I think we can still get some keen people down here who's got sensitive radioactive sort of like guided counters and things. Come down here and test it. Go down to Area 1, test the site. See if we can pick anything up. There still must be a lot of radiation there. The stump is still there at the moment, so if they dig it up, they dig it up, but it's still there.
I hear what you're saying, don't dig it up.
Yeah, well, they will. I expect they'll do anything like that. I mean, they seem to, everywhere we've gone, they seem to have cut trees down and try to change everything.
what about the shadow men we're seeing again now then?
Yeah,
well, the shadow men that are all over the place. That's not only us who are seeing it. Other people who are walking in the forest have seen it.
Well, are they stealth? No. Are they stealth like the soldiers? Have they got a cloak and thinking they can make themselves invisible and they can spy and listen to us? Because they said to you in a letter once, we know where you are, Brenda. We hear what you talk about. So there's somebody seems to be around here who can spy on you without being seen.
But we've seen all them little red lights in the forest, little things that flick on and off, which we thought were microphones or whatever on the forest, but they can hear us. But I mean, even people who come down here now have said, I mean, 3 weeks ago, a group come up to us and said, have you seen this person in black? And I laughed at men in black, and he said, well, it's like a shadow, keep following us, and then they disappear and appear in front of us. I said, he's around the forest all the time. I mean, that night, we see him 2 or 3 times, you know, and he was just around there. But I mean, one minute he was in front of us, we walked down towards him. When we got towards him, he just, he'd gone. Well,
it's like that figure walked past on the seat just down here. I saw walk past.
That's right.
Just, he glid past. I thought it was one of the sky watchers. It was so clear, it was dusk, but this person walked by and I looked and I thought, oh, it's John, but no, John's on the seat. That's right. This guy walked past, he didn't fall in a little hole, there's a hole there, just glid past, hands in front of him, just walking past and just carried on. Just come this way, so.
But it's a lot of spirit activity down here too, isn't it? Because the pilots. I mean,
there is, I think there's a bit.
The pilots who died down here, haven't we?
There's all sorts of things going on here.
So you see, that's just a big forest, a big mysterious.
I mean, it may have been a pilot that crashed in the plane over there. There was a plane crashes behind here somewhere. So
there's one up past Area 1, a plane, isn't there?
Yeah.
That crashed.
I think the this UFO things and bits and pieces are still going on, and still lots of activity. You got East End Charlie, which is famous.
That walks the wrong way.
Yeah, and he's like a German fighter pilot or pilot with all his stuff on. They've been seen, and the Americans even saw him at the gate. And Holt said sometimes they used to get so frightened. He said we had to relieve the person on the back gate.
Yeah, that's right.
He was so nervous.
He was so scared.
They had to be relieved. And
but you've got to remember that Dot and I, in the initial stages of 1980, we were told wherever we went by Colonel Holt, Donald Moore, and the forestry guys, you've got to be more technical. Stop thinking about UFOs. You have to think more technical.
So was he hinting towards high technology craft? Do you reckon?
Either that, or
he said think
you've got to be more technical.
Technical, minded.
Yeah, well, Dot and I thought and we couldn't think. I mean, the only thing we could think of was.
But the other thing is also when you start looking at Steve's map, map. When you start going left at Eastgate, that takes you that way up the road, and then you go left again because he's drawn them across, and that ties in with Area 1 right to a T. Yeah. That's spot on. And then you said Steve said something really early on, didn't he? Yeah. That something happened over that way. Yeah. And somebody I was talking to, funny enough, who drove buses and coaches for the base at Woodbridge here, he said that they heard about activity just on that side of the forest. Yeah. And he says there's a big area there. He said you could see where something had come down. So whether he's referring to the Area 1 or somewhere near to the road, but it's on that side. He said there was a lot of activity happened over that side.
And then there's Mr. Masters, who I interviewed. Do you remember? Who said about the tall, white, spindly people going down onto the ground?
That's right, on the base at Bentwaters.
Yeah, because he was the
That's
electrician,
interesting.
Weren't he?
Yes, and no underground facilities. He said there was underground facilities there.
Right.
You could hear voices from underneath.
Yeah.
Underneath.
Yeah, well, they went past him, didn't they? And he asked the guard what they were doing, and he said, I shouldn't ask, mate. He said, you know.
Yeah, well, you hear all talking. I mean, I was talking to a builder. His son-in-law who's worked on the base at Bentwaters, and he said they have got underground facilities, and he said some of them facilities are down half a mile down. And he said there's a track underneath there that locates and it links all the underground facilities. They've got dehumidifiers in the ground. They've got stuff that's still there now. It's encased in concrete. They've buried it underground. It's still there. It's still encased underground. It's just been 15 foot of reinforced concrete blocking this all off. And he said there's vents from the base. He said that lead out 15 miles or 20 miles from the base going out. Air vents.
Don't forget when we went for a walk around Daisy Walk one afternoon. We saw that big digger digging out all the furniture from under the ground, didn't we? They would bring out wardrobes and
I went on the
beds
one of the Jay's Cafe. Jay's Cafe, you can go on there now and have a cup of coffee on there, and that's open during the week. We went up there one day and they had a deep shaft, and they were lifting this heavy equipment. What it was massive equipment underground coming up, bringing it to the surface, and that was
big rooms underneath there where the military, the high brass go down,
there is underground.
And that under there
they have got underground
facilities.
And they've got. I mean, you only got to look at the mounds there now, and I've photographed some of them. You've got the air vents. You've got the mushroom comes up, the breezer like a snorkel like on a submarine. You've got them coming up, and you can see the air vents coming where they draw in the extractor fans, draw in fresh air and filter. So there's underground sort of shelters and bits in the ground there. So there's a little more to it than what meets the eye.
Well, I mean, the photo lab on Bentwaters there, they said the photo lab was on top, but if they want to go down underground, they used to get people and they used to take them down underground. The photo lab just went down
And
anyway.
Holt said that's too near the sea level. It flood.
Yeah,
You see,
no.
I don't take that
That's
one.
why
No.
they've got the storm drains.
Yeah.
To release all the flood water.
You know, you can build underground facilities. Orford Island, by the way, I was told by this one person I know. He said they had tunnels leading out from the underneath, go out to sea. They had laboratories out at sea, where they'd done the nuclear, the detonators and things
Yeah,
for
the
nuclear.
detonators.
When he said they had them under sea, if any problems, they could flood the laboratories and whatever, or even if there was an invasion or something, they could flood the whole area so it can
But
be.
they worked on there with the Russians. The Russians and the Americans actually worked together, and they also worked together on
And then
space
we got
things.
Cobra Mist here on the island. Woodbridge Base in 1960 and 70, they had microwave radar just on the same side as where Area 1, on that same side of the, just outside the base. 2 big domes, a rotating sort of like rotating sort of equipment with people sitting on these seats rotating.
Yeah.
And he said, this is a chap, John Morton, who used to work for the telecom. He said that he went to do some wiring on the place, and he said it was microwave radar they had, and the people couldn't stay in too long. They got sick and, you know, disorientated, so they had to come out. So these had to change shifts, but they were rotating in this like room. He said I had to go around with it while I was repairing these. What do you call it on them? The wiring.
Another story I've just thought of was Terry and Simon, when I met Terry and Simon down here. Remember the guys who phoned me up and asked me to meet them down here that night, and I came down here at 7:30 and they weren't there, and then this big black dark car drew up and had all blackened out windows and everything. That was like sort of like a smaller funeral car. And I went and met them. And I mean, Terry, he was carrying a briefcase which he never opened the whole night. And all he wanted to know was why I was interested in Orford Island. He weren't interested in Rendlesham. And we walked all the way down here, all the way to Colonel Holt's area. I showed him all the tracks and everything, but he weren't really interested at all.
So
all he wanted to know about was the deer pits and Orford Island.
Wow.
And I mean, we left here about 11:30, and when we got back into the car, he kept warning me. He said, "Be careful, Brenda, be careful." And I kept saying, "Well, what have I got to be careful of?" And he said, "Well, look, the government agencies," he said, "they know you're about." He said, and I said, "Well, it ain't only me, it's other people too." And he said, "Yeah, but you're interested in Orford Island." And I said, "No, I'm not." I said, "Why do you keep saying I'm not interested in Orford Island?" Because I'm not. You know, I had asked questions about Orford Island because I know people who used to work there, but I wasn't particularly interested in it. But he didn't want to know about anything about the UFO landed here or anything.
That's strange.
You know, and the whole time we walked round, the whole 4 hours, he did not open that briefcase once. And he was dressed in a suit, smart shoes, and a tie and a white shirt.
That's weird.
And Simon, he had on jeans and a sloppy sweater. But why Terry walked all the way around, that was so strange. And all they done, and when we got back to the car, was just warn me to be careful.
That's strange.
Because the government agencies. Yeah, that was really weird. It really was.
What about Roy Wilkinson, the guy who got arrested? He came up. He said he heard about the UFO in the forest, and he came up. Was it what night was that he came up?
I think that was the 27th.
27, because he came up to.
26th or 27th.
I know. I remember him telling me the story. He said I came up the track. He said I parked my had a Capri car, and he got out, he had his camera with him. He got out just near to the end of the runway and pulled on the side of the road. He said I got out of my car, my camera. He said before I knew it, out of nowhere come all these Americans, security guards. They surrounded me, took my camera off me, took the film at the camera. He said I went off in a vehicle. They put me into a Jeep. A Jeep. He said I was taken down Eastgate Road into the base. He said I was taken into their sort of like security office, where it was. He had to sit there for a while. Then then we was taken from there to Woodbridge Police Station, and he said I was just taken to the police station and said, "Here," and the policeman looked at him, the British policeman says, "Okay, he can go." And they took him back to the car and said, "Right, I want you to leave the area."
See, the thing is, the American police are not allowed to interview you, because when Dot and I got arrested on base with David, they weren't allowed to interview us. They had to send for the Woodbridge police to come and interview us. I mean, Colonel Holt thought that was funny anyway. I mean, it's like a Starsky and Hutch episode, that was. I mean, that was quite exciting, really.
Yeah, I bet it was.
You know,
but, you know, the whole thing seems strange. I mean, look at that triangular craft that came over you and Dot when you went to see Colonel Holt.
Yeah.
This is what I'm trying to put it clear. I mean, that was silent.
Yeah.
It was moving slowly just above your heads,
Yeah.
right? And you said it had lights underneath it, and
Yeah.
it just drifted over the Colonel Hope's house,
Yeah.
the residential area near Bentwaters. Now, if that was a UFO,
Yeah.
and the radar, you know, it must have been something they knew about, because if
Well, it must have been.
if that was an alien craft,
Yeah.
that would have been a almighty activity on the base, wouldn't there? They'd be there up in arms and running around and going crazy. They'd be saying, look at this thing here. They must have known about this craft, and it must be one of their technology craft.
Yeah, but that was all about the same time. We were getting calls from Woodbridge and from David and Sharon in Melton, because they were coming back from Holsey, and they actually saw it. It came over top of them when they were on their motorbike.
What, the same time, same night?
It was about round about that time.
See, so
yeah.
they're messing about with as a technology craft. They're not saying that's no wonder there's no defence significance. There's something they're hiding. They know about these things. And are they landing at Bentwaters? Were they landing? Were there technicians or ETs working underground, you know, on these craft, helping them technology?
Well, they are at Area 51, aren't they?
Yeah, at 51. Yeah, but I'm just saying about the American bases here. Were there? I mean, you said there was a chap there. He said he saw these things that are tall,
white,
white.
Tall things were white.
So they may have help from advanced technology or from advanced races.
Well, the ET's been telling us, the space people have been telling us for years and years and years that that's their technology that we're using, because they had a treaty with the government. They've been telling us that for years, haven't they?
So there is big cover-ups, I think, with who's who and what they've got, you know. Technology-wise, I think they're keeping things from us and not telling us everything.
I mean, I think after all this years now, I mean, that's in 1980 that happened. We're now 2006, it's 26 years ago. I really think anybody who comes up with a story now has either fabricated it, you know, or why haven't they come out with it before? Yeah,
this is what I meant to say about, you said about the Georgina Bruni's picture. You said, oh, as a hoax picture. Now, why did that stay in somebody's, was it an attic for some attic? I mean, if they wanted to use it as misinformation, they'd have brought it out nearer the time. This, you know.
Yeah, but it's just really strange. It should come out when Georgina's writing her book, and it hasn't been out before.
She was given it, wasn't she, from somebody?
Yeah, somebody found it in a shoebox.
A shoebox, but whatever it happened, it certainly brought another dimension to the case, and also evidence, because it ties in with a lot of things in that area. It has pointed to radiation and everything. So it's not just fabricated. It's not just.
Right, go to from the start. The story from the start. 27th of December. Right. We've got local people who are seeing the lights. We've got local people who are seeing the big mothership. We've got local people who are seeing the discs. Right. Right. And got local people who are seeing it come from the sea and and we've got all the different places in the forest where nothing has grown, and there's big round rings and nothing has grown. So either we've got an influx of UFOs here, all on the same night, or 26th night and the 27th night, right? Or somebody is planning a very, very funny hoax. But you see, the British never ever get a chance to air their views of what they saw. It's all the Americans, isn't it? All the time, it's the Americans.
But I mean, so if they've got the advanced technology craft, the Americans are not. They're keeping it hushed up, and that's why the British police are not saying anything. They're keeping quiet because they know what it was. And
yeah, but it couldn't have been a craft when people are seeing white lights in the sky and the great big mothership cannon. You know, when they say they see a great big huge object in the sky with lights on. You can't
rule out that some of these lights that were seen were not extraterrestrial. They could have been advanced.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
So they could have had a treaty with the Americans, or they could have been involved with the Americans. So they worked side by side.
These lights though, over that area, the 26th, 27th. Don't forget they were seen on over a vast area, weren't they? They weren't just locally, they were seen all over the place.
So there's
so there was an awful lot going on in the sky around that time. Yeah.
Well, I know, something big happened in 1987 here with all the hurricanes. That was, I mean, when you start examining the trees, and it started actually with Area 1, because I started finding the marks on the trees, and then I went further afield, and then when you start looking at all these trees around here, you find them being heated, marks, spin marks, abrasions anti-clockwise, all around that, in a northeasterly direction. Uncanny. There's too much evidence. And then you start going further, and it gets further and gets bigger and bigger. And it's not just Rendlesham, it's here. Go to Woodbridge, you find them in the trees. not forestry land. It's not just forestry. It can
Did
be
we
in
find it when we went to Thetford?
Thetford Forest. Yeah, we found some in Thetford.
We
Marks
found
on tree.
some in
I've seen them at
Thetford.
Thetford Forest, and wider field. But it's everywhere.
Sutton Hoo.
And you'll find trees that are heated or brown, scrapes on them, but they're all some with abrasions. Anti-clockwise, you can see the abrasions. Some of the places you can see where they've gone between the trees, and they're no more than 2 metres wide. They're 6 foot across. Some of these little disc craft things, and they can see where they're pushed through the trees. And some of the parts of the forest, I showed Richard Davis, who was the forester at he was head of the forestry at the time, and he said, I can see where you're coming from. I said, well, it's actually pushed their way through the trees. You see that whacked the branches off, and he's actually grinding as marks up the trees. You can see where it's grinding through, just like a grinding wheel. I said, you can see that. And he said, oh yeah, I can see where you're coming from. And I said, look at these trees here. They look radiated. They're sick. Some of them, I said, they're all peeling. The bark's coming off them, sick and poor, and they're still here today. You can go and look at them. They're dying, and they've just been fried. And I said, they look like radiation, but he didn't comment on that. He didn't comment at all about it. And I think a lot of these trees have got radiation, and they've been radiated to a degree where they've killed them. I mean, you look at the oak trees, I found loads of oak trees all around. I don't know, I sent an email to David Bellamy, I never had a reply, but I told him, I said, all the investigators, I've been investigating these trees for the last 5 years, I said to him, and I said, the trees you'll find with anti-clockwise, abrasions, scrapes, trees have been heated, and you'll notice more noticeable on pines and oak. I said the pines, because they're straight, you get a true definition. But they see with the oak trees, they actually killed the trees and branches are often. There's dead trees, all tops of trees all around the country. If you look around the country now, you'll see dead trees, and some places are more dense than others, whereas there's been there must have been a massive invasion come right across this part of the country. On low level, they didn't attempt to miss the trees, they just came through and continued a big swath right across the country. And parts of the forest here was knocked down in swaths, and I got photographs from, bless him, he sent me stuff off from the forestry, and he sent some pictures to me, and they showed the devastation of the forest of the hurricane, because I was interested in the hurricane. And I got permission, I went on Bentwater's base and asked the Kembles, I said, I'm doing a tree survey of the hurricane 1987. I didn't mention anything about UFOs, because I never got on that base, so I went on there and done the tree survey, and I went on there and the same marks, and the weapons storage area on Bentwaters, the same marks on the trees right beside the weapons storage area. So they didn't have no defence significance to whatever they come through in 1980. There was no defence whatsoever. Now, there's no defence significance.
Well, don't forget when I went up to Wales to see my daughter, don't forget I looked at all the trees up there, because everywhere we went we were looking at trees.
So did you see anything in?
Yeah, I told you, all the fir trees are all burnt off at the tops, and all the marks and that. So just the same as what we got here. I found it up there too.
Well, I did actually, when I was on holiday in Scotland, I actually looked at, when I was up near to the actual Ben Nevis, no, not far Ben Nevis, it's just down from the next the range. There was trees there, and there's some trees that same things with marks on. That's in Scotland, and the same sorts of marks. There's a big cover-up. So not tell the truth.
But you did do a chart, didn't you, where that came swept right across?
Yeah, well, I did trace a lot of it through, but you can see tracks where there's more denser formations that seem like they come through, and the trees are more irradiated or killed in certain paths. You'll see it more denser. Thing, but it's the same. We had trees down in Kew Gardens, and there's all that sort of thing, damage. But if you could study some of these trees, you'll see in built-up areas is another interesting thing. In towns, you'll see pine trees, the same spin marks on them. So and actually, I've got a photograph in Ipswich. There's actually a house that they said the wind of the hurricane pushed this bricks in. It was the knee of the house, and it punched a hole, and it's just the shape of a disc. That punched this whole wall in, and I've got the photograph of that. And he said that was the wind blew it in, and underneath that was a lovely big bay window, big window, sash window. Yeah. Now, if it had enough force to push that wall in, that would push that bay window glass in and everything. It didn't touch that. This just looked forced in. You can see the edges that curled, the bricks are pushed in that way, and I measured it. I calibrated the bricks, the size, and I knew that's about the size of one of these discs, like 2 metres or 6 foot. Something had gone in and punched this in deliberately, just shoved it in.
Right, hold.
Good.
Right, okay. And had I been holding that, I just stopped about half an hour ago. This is pretty good, it takes the weight.
Right, so you got quite a lot of information there.
Yeah, I thought I'd just let you run. Yeah, you're on a run, so just let it run.
Just go with the flow. Go for it. We covered most things.
Even stuff we didn't mention before.
Yeah.
Because it had that informal feel, it wasn't
yeah.
like a lecture.
No, that's right, just going on.
We were too formal beforehand.
So
yeah.
But the
we
lights.
can.
I don't think we'll risk going down. Do you want to go that way?
I'll go down that way, but you don't want to go down that way.
I don't mind. No, I can.
We can waddle down here. It'll be all right.
I want to good sun. I know you can do it.
That's a handy bit of kit he's got there, though, isn't it? Get a nice steady.
That's a whole
Yeah.
different technology.
Yeah, that is. That's floating, isn't it? It's floating. So you've got no vibrations.
And the idea was that
So you're actually floating around. It's when you get that on the. It's good. Yeah.
see, once Matthew offered the.
Yeah.
I mean, he's come as much distance as you are from London.
Yeah. Yeah.
As, you know, it's,
Yeah. Yeah. It's good of him, really, isn't it?
I know. Brenda's busy, but I mean, if Brenda can give you all the data.
Yeah. Well, I think she can come down. She's one of it, Mason. I think she'll be all right. Once we get a day up there. That won't be a. No.
And it doesn't. It can be raining at the end.
Yeah.
It can be inside.
That's right. That's right.
Data on
Yeah. Definitely.
computer, scanning everything.
That's
you know,
right.
One resolution, all this bump file.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
The main thing is graphics. Everything these days is fancy.
Yeah, that's right. Everything illustrated, and then because people are, you know, when you're trying to describe something to somebody, they can't. They all got a different picture of something until you put a picture in front of them, and then they go, "Oh, that's what it looked like."
In many respects, that's one of the problems with tabloid journalism.
Yeah. The press is just put in what they want to put in. They don't.
Kids take information, so much more information, and their visual memory is much faster.
Yeah.
So they can take lots more information visually, and if they don't see lots of new information, they get bored.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
That's it. This is it in here. They've made a bit of a cock up. They don't even say Colonel Holtz or nothing. It's just like, just go in here. Doesn't it says UFO, but it doesn't.
Call it A, B, or C.
Yeah, why don't they call it A, B, and C? Then just put a bit of right about it. They didn't even put a name to it, have they?
No, because they don't recognise it, do they?
Yeah. Oh, it's got number 3 on here. UFO Trail 3. It's got here. UFO Trail 3. So they have put a sign on it. Yeah, I like that. Oh, something's done to that. Got a little ET. Something's written on there.
Well, we want to do this. Is this it
Here, in here. In here. Yeah. Well, here we are. This is. Well, here we are. This is it.
Yeah, what we want to do is we want to explain the whole thing walking in with, and you want to see where you're walking so you don't bash yourself?
Sure. I'm going to have to do a tape change in a minute because we're on 55 minutes.
you want leave my bags? Should I bring them bags?
Take a quick one, a quick sort of.
Yeah, he wants them out for the
Hmm?
area.
I'll bring them bags. I'll bring them bags out. And
Yeah.
Bentwaters Woodbridge. How did the incidents at Rendlesham Forest commence?
It started off on the 27th of December with 2 security guards standing at the east gate and seeing lights over the forest.
And what proceeded from that point?
They communicated with the officers way back in the central, sorry.
In the main office?
Yeah, central control.
You want to go back over that then?
Yeah, security control.
Start from, they communicated back from the people in central control.
So how did the events start with the Bentwaters Woodbridge incident?
It started on the 27th of December in 1980 with 2 security guards at the east gate seeing lights over top of the forest.
And what did they report?
They phoned back to their commanding officer in the central control security office and told them that they'd seen lights over the forest, and they thought that a plane had come down because the lights had come down in the forest. They asked permission to go out to check on it.
So if a plane comes down, there must be a lot of noise, possible flames, stuff like that. Was it anything like that?
No, it wasn't. It was silent, but they just thought that's what it was. They couldn't think of anything else, and they just thought an aircraft had come down.
So which location is this?
It's in the location off track, in between 12 and 10, track 10 and track 12.
And in relation to the end of the runway, where would that be?
The end of the runway, it would be straight over from the runway and down the tracks.
So what are we calling that? Are we calling that zone 1 or halt zone or what?
Well, halt zone. We call it Halt's area.
Okay, Holt's area. So
Yes.
from now on we'll describe that as Holt's area.
Okay.
Colonel Holt being the base commander.
Yes, he was at the time. He was the deputy base commander, sorry.
Deputy base commander.
He was the deputy base
Who
commander.
was the base commander? Was he an RAF guy?
No, he was the British base commander, Donald Morland. I think Gordon Williams was at the time.
So how did events unfold once these lights had been reported to the main base?
After they'd got permission to go out, they were told to leave their weapons behind, and they sent for another guy who came there, left their weapons with him, and then they got in their jeep and they went down the road from the east gate. When they got to the bottom of the road, they turned to the right, and then they turned up track 12, went down track 12, and when they were going down track 12 they could see the lights in the forest. So they left their vehicle where they couldn't go any further because it was all ruts and big deep holes and that. So they left the vehicle there, got out and went over on foot through the forest to see what they could see.
And what did they see?
Well, when they got there they said they saw something like a triangle craft with lights flashing on and off, and it was on sort of like on legs on the ground.
What size? Did you get a size? Was it something overwhelming? The size of the trees, above the trees, or?
No, it wasn't that big. I think it was, I can't remember the size, 30 foot by, I can't remember, 20 foot, something like that.
You're talking something that would hold 2 people? Would it be big enough to hold 2 sort of soldiers or aircraft people?
It would be big enough to hold 2 people as long as they were very small people.
So what did they report back then? How did the events progress from this? This is obviously a fairly serious event.
There's a lot of things that haven't come out, and as for the reporting back, there's something that's never ever been released. The reporting back of what was actually said. I know they checked, or one of them was supposed to have touched the craft, and from there on we don't know what happened, because there's no knowledge or no paperwork or anything being released to say what happened from there on. The next incident they went on to was the second night.
So let's just tie ourselves down. Let's get this first incident. I mean, we have now a landing. This thing landed on 3 legs.
Yes.
In Halt zone.
Do you want to go a little bit closer so you can questions to look at you, but what I'm thinking was, in terms of you being picked up on the mic, do you want your audio in on this? It's coming through, but you're going to be at a much lower level, so you have to constantly keep turning up later on.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was picking up on that.
Yeah, this isn't in use now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're in a situation where we have a report of a landed triangular object.
Yes.
Reported now and being seen by 3 US Army personnel.
2.
So I thought...
No, the third one stayed with the weapons. He didn't actually go into the forest at that time. He stayed behind and looked after the weapons.
These are the weapons which were surrendered at the base before they went out?
Yes.
Is there any reason why they couldn't take the weapons with them?
They're not allowed to go off base with weapons because they're going on to British territory. So they have to, the weapons have to actually stay on base.
So, do you have any description as to the colour, sound, feeling, or any other perceptive imagery about what that object was?
There wasn't any sound, it was silent, and it was silver with red lights on. It was flashing on red lights and blue lights.
Where were the lights located? Above, below, all around it?
There were some at the top and some at the bottom. There was a bank of blue lights at the bottom and red lights at the top. They were flashing on and off.
10, a dozen?
They didn't
2,
say.
3?
Don't know, they didn't say. They just said a bank of lights.
Can we identify these 2 servicemen?
Yeah, one was Burroughs, John Burroughs, and the other one was John Penniston.
And they've stated all this already, really, in the books Star Crash, Left at Eastgate, and the You Can't Tell the People.
Sky Crash.
Sky Crash.
Yes, they've been on television, they've been in magazines, newspapers, several books. Their interviews are well known.
So that's as much as that's as much as can be said for the first night.
Yes.
There's nothing else that's known about the first night.
No, that's about it. I mean, we don't know any more until the second night, and then we don't really know much about that. Only what Colonel Holt's memo have said, really.
So let us go into the second night. What exactly happened? How did things evolve? And who was involved?
Once again, that's debatable who was involved because we've never actually got the names of the people who've been involved. I mean, we were told that Penniston was involved, Bustinza was involved, John Burroughs was involved, but then we find out that's not right. There was Colonel Holt was involved. He was at a party, a Christmas dinner party, and somebody went running into him saying, it's back, sir, and he said, what's back? And I said, the UFO is back. And so he then he didn't take it seriously at first, and then Neville's came in and said, yes, it's back. And he was the preparedness, he was to do with the preparedness team.
What's the preparedness team?
They're the ones who get the Geiger counters and the light halls and everything to bring in. So anyway, he asked him to go back and to get the light halls and the Geiger counters and that, and Colonel Holt in the meantime went back to his house and changed from his dinner gear, put his fatigues and everything on, went and collected his tape recorder. We think all in all that took him about an hour and a half to 2 hours to go from the base home to collect everything. Collect some of the guys around the base who were around the base, they were young guys apparently, he collected. Got in a jeep, come back up to the Forestry Commission Road, came along the Forestry Commission Road, although there's 2 or 3 stories as to which way he did come. But that's one of the first stories.
Where is the Forestry Commission Road in relation to the end of the runway?
It comes past the runway and it comes straight up to the Forestry Commission office. But it comes off the Butler Road and it comes past the runway lights.
So where is this, where have the object, or where is the activity happening?
Colonel Holt's area, around that area.
Second time?
Well, this is the second time, yeah. This is
obviously happening a very long period of time. If he's been able to A, be notified, and B, he's gone and changed and done whatever and collected a posse of people, they seem to be very confident that this thing's going to stay around for a very long period of time.
Well, this is what we've never been able to make out. Why you know, why he took so long. I mean, if you're told there's a UFO around or a spacecraft around, you know, you naturally want to go and see it. But he didn't. He was on Woodbridge Base. He went home by road. He didn't even cut through the base. He went all the way around by the road and went home and got everything ready, and then came out of the back gate, past the Butler Oyster, which is a pub, come up and up the Forestry Commissioner Road, and he said as he came up the road he could see the lights in the forest, which isn't true, because you can't see the lights in the forest, because that was about a mile away and you couldn't see the lights all that way away. And then he came up to track 12, parked, went through the woods, went through the forest, and all he saw, he didn't see a craft. He has always said he didn't see a craft. Sorry. Sorry.
Okay. No.
That was his face.
There's a very small amount of shadow coming off the trees on Brenda's face, and what's happening is it's lighting up the chest, and it's shadowing the face, so the chest is very bright.
As the sun's going to come on,
Excuse me.
you need to move further into the...
So you want to go all in shadow? Yeah, that's better. Okay.
Then it's even light.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Let me refocus.
Come up since then, so.
Okay, running up. Okay.
So Colonel Holt took his time to get round to the incident. Do you have any reason to believe he was fairly confident that what he was dealing with, that he knew what he was dealing with?
I don't think at the time he knew what he was dealing with, but that's just always amazed us at how much time he took. You know, there didn't seem to be any hurry, even when he got back to track 12 and he went down track 12, nothing seemed to hurry him, you know. He didn't go running through the forest, think, no, there's a UFO, there's a spacecraft there. But he's always said that he didn't see any craft here. All he saw was lights, just a big light going through the forest, and then they followed it across the farmers' fields and out towards the river.
Where's following it across the farmers' fields? Is that Cable Green?
Yes, it is, yeah, well, where Boast is.
And that's featured in Left at Eastgate. That's the events featured by Larry Warren's books.
I think that's featured in all of the books, yeah.
So what I'm trying to figure out is, this is a base which is on alert.
Yeah, it had a red alert. Well, it had a high, that was on high alert, yes, it was.
This is the second unknown object to come right onto the base perimeter.
Yes.
And he's taken his time as if there's no hurry.
Well, they said there was no defence significance in it. They'd phoned the British MOD, they'd phoned the British police, and the British police and the MOD just told the Americans to handle it. They didn't want to know.
So that would imply that the MOD and the British police need to know more than the base, the Americans on site knew.
Well, certainly knew more, what Holt, yeah. They certainly knew more than what Holt did, yes.
So what is, where did the object go? Did it take off into the sky, or what?
Well, supposedly the first night it was Burroughs went to touch it, and as he went, no, sorry, Penniston went to touch it, and as he went to touch it, he wrote down the numbers which were on it, all different sequels of things that were on the thing. And
now going back to the first night,
it just took off.
It had texted letters,
symbols
on it.
Yes, it did.
Were those symbols recorded anywhere?
He recorded them in his notebook, and they have been recorded in magazines, and that's been on the television, all the symbols and that. But they're general symbols which we see, you know, which we pick up down here, and you see in UFO books and that.
Has anybody interpreted what those symbols are?
No, no. But why I went back to the first night, because I was then coming up to the second night to say that the red light, that just carried on, that didn't land or anything. Colonel Holt just saw that, and that just carried on through the trees and across the farmer's field.
Is this towards, further away from the base or towards the base?
No, no, it's towards the sea,
right.
Out towards the sea.
Critics have said that all that's been seen is just the lighthouse.
Well, the lighthouse.
The whole event was just purely the lighthouse.
Well, the lighthouse had got some powerful batteries in it, if that's taken off to fly over the forest. because Dot and I came down in 81, 82 and standing up at the
Dot
East...
is who? Who was Dot?
Dot Street.
Was she a co-investigator at the time?
She was at the time, yes, and co-author of Sky Crash.
With Jenny Randalls?
With Jenny Randalls. But we stood up at the East Gate and you couldn't see the lighthouse through the trees. And for those guys, the security guards, to have been on the base, seeing that lighthouse, you know, whenever they were out and about, I mean, they must have known it was something completely different. They knew it wasn't the lighthouse.
So on the first night, this thing was touchable, or the object on the first night was touchable, and then it just took off?
Yes.
When it was touched?
Yeah, yes. Penniston went up and he took the symbols, and Burroughs apparently tried to climb on the object.
So, did they suffer any ill effects from any of this?
Penniston didn't, Burroughs did.
What kind of ill effects?
Burroughs, he was sort of like, he felt sick, he vomited, he felt dizzy, and he felt as though he was sort of like everything was happening, he was in a different place.
In what way?
It's like he'd been transported to somewhere else.
Is he able to say where that somewhere else was?
No.
Did he have any other experiences?
No.
How long did those experiences go on for?
What, with Burroughs?
Yeah.
I think for about a week. They said that he was out of it sort of for about a week. He just wanted to keep going back to the forest and they had a job to stop him going back.
Did he receive any medical attention? Was he... Surely if a man in the US Air Force is at that time, with base on alert, is behaving in that manner, did he not receive any medical attention of some description?
That haven't been reported at all about medical or anything. Nowhere has it been reported that he received medical attention.
So he kept this within himself and his roommate?
Yeah, Penniston. Well, I mean, people must know about it now because it's been written books about what happened.
So, why did the US personnel inform Holt that it was a UFO if the British police and the MOD are saying, well, you handle it?
Well, because I asked this question and they said anything is a UFO to them if they don't understand what it is, and it was an object that they'd never seen before. And there was weird lights over the forest and coming through the forest, so that was a UFO because they didn't know what it was.
So nobody's sort of raising the alarm that a base on alert is having strange objects. I mean, what happens if it was the Russians coming in to steal something from the base or something, or terrorists or something like that? It wouldn't have been a defence significance?
No, I mean, everybody, the MOD, they've all said it wasn't defence significance, which to me means that they knew what it was. Even if that was a UFO, that was a craft or something that they didn't know what it was. An experimental craft or new kind of experimental aircraft, whatever. They didn't know what it was.
So this object, what finally on the second night, what was the closing stages, what was the closing events?
Colonel Holt and about 2 or 3 men went over the farmer's field through a ditch.
Is this when the Colonel recorded his
Yes,
tape?
yes.
Okay.
And they went over to the river, and while they were up by the river, up on the hill by the river, they saw lights beaming down from this light down onto Woodbridge base by the weapons storage area.
What about Bentwaters? Was the Bentwaters area not targeted as well?
No, Bentwaters at that stage was never ever mentioned, except for the lookout tower. That's all, and what they said they saw was like one big object breaking into 3 and then going back into 1 again. But Bentwaters was never ever mentioned. It's only...
What size was this object seen by the Bentwaters tower that it behaved like that?
They said it was. They said it was a triangle, but they said it was massive. I mean, apart from that, we haven't got any how big it was or anything. Everything is so sketchy. We only know what the airmen told us. We only know what we've picked up by investigating around the area, what the locals saw. The stories from the American airmen have been changed over the last 26 years, time and time again. And Colonel Holt puts it down that something happened to the men and they lost a lot of their memory. They can't remember what actually happened.
So something of no defence significance is able to screw around with security personnel at a US Air Force base in full red alert.
Yeah.
And that's not of defence significance.
That's right, well, that's what they say. But there definitely was a red alert going on at the time. But I think that because of the Cold War, so Colonel Holt told us once, because of the Cold War, they had to check everything out to make sure that was nothing to do with the Russians or whatever.
And checking something out is something you take an hour and a half or so to deal with.
Yeah, I know, it took an awful long time. You can't really explain that.
So, what did the object do? We've got witnesses from the other base saying that there's a triangular object above, shining lights down onto it or onto the base as well. No,
the guys in the lookout tower, while all this was going on, they could see a triangular light, right, and that had little lights going in and out of it. That broke into three, and then it went back into one again, and they could see this from the lookout tower, while Colonel Holt was seeing his lights out at sea, and this was beaming down lights on the weapons storage area back here at Woodbridge.
What was the result of that?
They just disappeared. Nothing really. Not that we know, nothing's been reported. I mean, it just sort of, even on Colonel Holt's tape, they just went back to the base at 4 o'clock and basically that was it. Colonel Holt said that if it weren't for Dot and myself, none of this would ever be released. It had just stayed within the men who actually saw it and what was there, what happened. He said it had never ever been released into the media. That was Dot and I who released it.
Was that the News of the World article?
Well, that was before the News of the World article. I put some in the East Anglian Daily Times, in the local paper. I put and had several interviews before the News of the World.
Is it possible to get hold of those articles?
Yeah, I've got them in my scrapbook at home.
We'll look at that later. So that was day 2. That's the end of the events of day 2.
Yes.
So was there a third day?
Not that I know of. No.
So that's basically the vent borders incident.
Yeah, I mean there is the other incident that happened out at sea when the fishermen were told to stay out of the waters.
Can you describe more about that?
Well, one of the fishermen phoned me up way back in 1980 when the story broke in the News of the World and said, "Did you know that we were told to stay out of the waters and we weren't allowed to fish in the area because they were doing experiments off Orphan Island?" And I said, "Well, no, I heard the HMS Norfolk was out there." And he said, "Well, yeah, we were paid handsomely to stay out of the water, which was be more than what I'll catch, what we'd have caught, you know, was worth." And I said, "Well, what actually happened then?" And he said, "Well, we had to stay out of the waters from the 25th of December to the 31st of December because something was going on there, but they wouldn't tell us what." And we know the HMS Norfolk from Portsmouth was out there. And we know that there was a helicopter also flying around, searching in the sea for something. And the only thing that we can think would be the Big Bill satellite was dropping down film capsules. Because one of the 67th Air Rescue Squadron, who went out there at the time, his wife has told us a lot of stuff of what happened, photographs and shown us papers and documents and that. She said they went out and picked up this satellite, and that was the 27th of December.
Right, a fisherman once called. What did he say and what did it lead to?
The fisherman who called told me that he'd seen the article in the News of the World, and did I know about the fishermen being told by the government. He didn't know who, they just called him and told him to stay. Over the period of the 25th of December 1980 to the 31st of December 1980, because there was an experiment going on. There was something going on. They thought it was microwaves off Ireland, because they heard they were testing microwaves on off Ireland and something to do with Bordsea. But they paid quite handsomely for their catch, you know, which they didn't get, but they were paid. They said that they got more money off the government than what they normally would have done. So anyway, they stayed out of the waters for about a week, and HMS Norfolk was there, and from
what
Portsmouth.
Kind of, ship is that?
It's
a frigate or something?
yeah, I don't know. It's yeah,
okay.
Whatever. All I know was the HMS Norfolk, and that had the engineers on board were told they had to stay below. They weren't allowed to come above, on deck or anything. They had to stay below over this period of time, and all they could hear was a helicopter flying around. And they heard later that had been searching the sea for something. At the same time, the Russian Tupolev, which they call the Bear, was going up and down our waters. That was reported on Anglia television over that time, about the 27th. But the gentleman who, the interviewer who actually said it, I think he got into trouble because it weren't meant to be newsworthy. It wasn't meant to be. Because later on when I phoned up and I inquired about it, he said that it wasn't supposed to have gone out. We also know there was a Russian submarine in the waters about that time, in our waters about that time, which later on you'll hear the questions I asked Colonel Holt about those. And we don't know what the result was. I mean, all we know is that after the 31st, or after a few days, everything went back to normal. So what the result was of HMS Norfolk being out there and the Russian Tupolev going up and down our waters, the only thing we could think of was that they were looking for the spy, the satellite, which if they dropped these capsules, they were after.
What kind of satellite are you talking about?
The Big Bird 16.
Big Bird 16?
Yeah, which is a, well, the articles that I've read and the articles I've got about it, it's a great big huge platform, really big platform, quite heavy, with a satellite on board.
And those are re-entry capsules which are then picked up?
Yes, they are yeah, they are. They drop them, Big Bird comes over and they drop the capsules into the sea. And there's a helicopter either picks them up, or if not, an aircraft picks them up. I think it's the Galaxy who picks them up. Well, yeah.
So I've heard, you've mentioned in the past a man and his dog. Does that have any connection with any of the cases you've been talking about?
Well, once again, that was on the 27th of December 1980, about 11 o'clock. This gentleman, he normally takes his dog up. He drives from the village of Butler and he comes up and he parks his car down the bottom of track 10, right down the bottom, near Mr. Bose's farm. And he walks up through the driveway there, up through the track, and he normally turned off into the woods where the track is now, but they never used to have tracks then. And he turned off into there and he came up and he saw the great big lights. Well, he saw all the lights, the forest illuminated before he got there. And at first, his first instance, he thought, well, what are those lights doing? They're not from the base, because he walked his dog there nearly every night. And he thought that was really strange. Anyway, his dog started getting a bit jumpy and sort of putting its heckles up and everything, and the dog's name was Bess. And he called her back and she sort of growled and that. And as he got closer and closer, he walked up really quietly, got hold of his dog, and he could see this silver thing, which was at that angle, like that, in sort of like a crater in the ground. And there was 3 men in silver suits. And he said to me, no, they weren't aliens, they were firemen from Woodbridge Base, and they were covering this silver thing up with a tarpaulin. But while he was there was another one searching the ground as though it was looking for something. And while he was there was a helicopter came, and that came, so he thought not hang around, because he said, oh, I didn't want them to think that I was spying on them or get arrested or anything. So
what area is this object embedded in?
Colonel Holt's area.
So again, Colonel Holt's area.
That's exactly where he took us to, the exact place. Yeah.
And what happened to that object?
I've no idea, not unless the helicopter came and took it away. Because he saw this at 11 o'clock, and the 2 old people, the elderly people who lived in the cottage opposite track 10, they said that they heard a lot of noise, and I think that was 11:45, about 11:15 at night, and they were in bed and they heard all this noise, like English and American people talking, and so they went to the window and had a look, and they saw a helicopter with, well, they described it as she described it like an ice cream cone upside down, and he described it sort of like that, like bell-shaped, and that was hanging underneath the helicopter. and she said that had hit the runway lights. And then apparently the helicopter swerved and swung and one of the chains or something had broken, and that went over and dropped the object in the forest, which we now call Area 1, over that way.
That's also featured in Georgina Bruni's book.
Probably because I told her the story.
So hold that thought a second, your camera's gone off.
Yeah, I know.
For some reason. I just want to let you know.
Because I've lost the battery, I'm not going to keep
Okay,
this.
that's no problem. We're alright with this. That's fine.
A lost marine battery. Some of the things.
No problem.
So what happened to this? There's stories of a Galaxy or transport aircraft coming in at some period of time.
Well, there was a 141 transport came in with high government men on board, and they were supposed to have loaded up this object, whatever it was, and took it to Germany.
And so that brings in a whole different scenario. We've got the base commander running around taking his time with other lights and things in the sky and around the forest. But then we have this completely different story that the fisherman has alerted you to about what amounts to a re-entry vehicle of some kind, or do you have any definite contact between the item which the fireman had and this supposed satellite? Where do you get the idea of the satellite or the object in the sea? Where does that idea, how do you connect any objects in the sea with what landed at the base?
Because Karen, this American lady, she phoned me up one day and asked and told me about it. Said that her husband was a 67th Air Rescue pilot of one of the helicopters, and he'd been asked to go out. He'd been called up and asked to go out on that night, and he went out on that night and pulled this thing out of the sea.
He was a helicopter pilot?
He was a helicopter pilot, yes, her husband was, yes. And he went out and he picked this thing up from the sea.
So you're getting first-hand testimony of the chain of events, of the fishermen on alert, the ship being on alert, the Russian submarines and aircraft, and then this definitely ties in that he was a helicopter pilot that dropped this thing at Holt's area, or took it from Holt's area.
Well, we don't know if that's the same incident, because unless he took it out of the sea and he dropped it in Holt's area and then re-picked it up again and hit the runway lights. If it's all happened on the 27th, and the times, if you go in with the times are all within about 15 minutes to a half an hour of each other. But it's all happened on the 27th, when this UFO incident was supposed to have happened. All round about the same time.
Do you think that Holt's task was to create a cover story to cover the fact that they brought in a secret satellite re-entry vehicle device?
Colonel Holt has never actually ever said it was a UFO. All he said was he saw something that he couldn't describe because he'd never ever seen anything like it before. He said he saw lights in the forest, so basically he's not telling an untruth, because he could have seen lights in the forest, and he could have seen this big bird, whatever, or even this satellite, and if he'd never ever seen anything like it before, he would be telling the truth by saying, I've never ever seen anything like it before, which is what he's always said. So to him, or to other people, that might have been a UFO, because maybe none of the others had seen anything like it either.
So then the military screw up. They lift up this object from one end of the base, bring it across the base, catches the aircraft landing lights, which are the tall suspended lights, about 50 feet up, and then drop it again.
They drop it because one of the chains apparently had broken, which was holding it from the helicopter, and that was round this object. And apparently when it swung and it hit the runway lights, apparently one of the chains came adrift, and that was pulling the helicopter about because it was swinging, so they took it over and they dropped it in the forest, which we now call Area 1.
And then we gather that was picked up and put into the transport aircraft and taken away.
Yes, either that or they went and loaded it onto a lorry, and they took it to the aircraft, and they loaded it onto the aircraft and took it to Germany.
So that means we've basically got two events happening on the same night, according to what people are saying.
Yeah, but I think the first night's incident was actually the 25th, 26th, and the second night was the 27th, 28th.
Why do you say that?
Only by Parish, because if he said when he chased, or when they saw their UFO and they chased the UFO was the 25th, 26th. But you've got to remember the 25th going over to the 26th, the 27th going over into the 28th. This is where a lot of people get confused. When you say the 25th, 26th, they think that's two incidents. You say the 27th, 28th, they think that's another two incidents, and that isn't. It's going over into the next day.
Were the British police involved with any of these incidents?
The British police were involved, but just recently I've had a witness come forward to say that the British police were actually involved in a drug incident which didn't take place until New Year's Eve. But then we've got other witnesses saying that the British police came up on the 27th and all they saw was the lighthouse and rabbit scrapings. Halfway up to the forest when they were called away to a robbery, and they were also called away to a fight at one of the local pubs. So they never really ever made it up to the forest until the next day.
So what I'm trying to figure out is if there's a photograph involved where there's a British policeman looking down at things in one of the locations?
Yes, there is, yes. In Georgina Brownie's book, this one, yes.
And what's involved there? At which location are we talking about?
We're talking about Area 1, where this object was supposed to have been dropped by the helicopter. And the trees were supposed to have been scrapings on the trees. Radiation was picked up.
So your colleague Peter's done a lot of work on that?
Yes, he has, yes.
Okay, let's talk to Peter. Well, Peter, how did you get mixed up in all this?
Well, I was interested in UFOs even from in the 1980s, before the Rendlesham incident actually, because I worked on a farm in Foxhall, not far away, back in 1975 onwards. In 1980, in May 1980, on the farm I actually came across a landing site on a mound there. Found something had landed, taking it samples, and
you've got physical trace elements.
I've got photographs and slides I took at the time. Something had landed on had a cross-shaped base, and it was more like a, I would say, disc-type shaped craft, and it took samples of soil 6 inches diameter, and you can see this spun in a clockwise direction, and then took these samples and took off again. But it came directly down, but there's no burn marks. There's no sign of any vehicle being up on this mound, because it's marsh all the way around this crag, red crag.
So are you saying this area around the bases?
Yeah, I think
has got a history of UFOs.
A lot of activity been seen. I mean, Ipswich as well. When I used to live in Ipswich, Mother's seen green orbs over at night time going straight over towards the base, going towards Woodbridge, lit up the whole sky. So there's fluorescent ball just going that way. So activity I've had activity on radio, off station. You could hear this crackling disturbance, and that would go over, and the flash would appear in the sky at the same time. So there's like a path or direction or of energy, or wherever it is travelling across the sky. So
obviously, because you live in the area, you're
yeah.
aware of all of the aircraft.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely that. I mean, it's not aircraft. These are silent, but they're just going over. But you can pick up on the radio sometimes a disturbance, and that picks up. So I was interested from 1980. I got joined a UFO group in Lowestoft, and that was they were just a border science investigation group at the time. But got investigated with one or two chaps up there in Lowestoft, and I did meet up with Brenda again. One or two. I belonged to the Astronomical Society at All Park School, and met Brenda there again at some open days ahead, and Brenda come along with her UFO stuff. So I did ask her about UFOs then. So, so we really got into that early, and really, I was always kept interested in the UFO side of things.
So how did the events unfold in your research with the?
Well, the Rendlesham case, I mean, I got back in contact with Brenda. I said, I've got a lot of information I'd like to share with you, what I've found out, just generally around what I've been finding out myself, and started coming down at Rendlesham and asking about the incident, and it went from...
What sort of information have you got?
Well, it started really just investigating what happened, and the back gate was always fascinating to me, because I did ask Brenda, and Brenda's asked the Colonel Holt about the back gate, And because I said, well, the back gate and the east gate was very sort of like, it seems like it's two, he said that's the same gate, but it doesn't make sense. Cause sort of like, so I researched and I checked out the place and went round. There is another gate on the north side of the base, which I've been now found out they call the back gate, which is on the north side, north gate, or the back gate.
And that is located, is that near Area 1?
It's on that side of the base, it's adjacent to that side, so they could come out through the back and into the forest from there quite easily.
So what I understand is a lot of the information is pointing us away from the back gate.
Yeah.
Green, the whole
they've been trying to keep the east gate, left at east gate. I mean, that don't seem to be right. They're going in the wrong direction in the first place. I think left, you know, when you're going left from east gate, you are turning back and then left again into the forest where Area 1 is. So I think there's been some misinformation there, or misled. I think that there was definitely something big happened out that direction on the base.
What do you have to tell us about?
Well, I came across an area in the forest. So I was drawn with Brenda. I said, Brenda, I like this bit of the trees. It's very rich.
What brought you there?
Just got a lead. There's in a feeling. There's something like, because I get led quite a lot down here. There's things, and I get drawn. See symbols come through to me. But the thing here was I was getting drawn to go into this forest. I want to recreate an area where it landed, something had landed. This is what my first intentions were. Something was trying to draw me in this bit of woods because it hadn't been blown down by the hurricane. So it looked original. I thought, this, well, we can get a feel what it would have been like to be in this sort of area. But we walked through this bit of trees and we found a track leading, and we followed this track and we got into this bit of forest and we found stakes, 4 stakes, oak stakes with a bit of fluorescent paint. They're faded, they've been there some time. And this area, I don't know, I just stood in there, I turned my back and I looked up this tree and I could see a scrape coming down the tree. And I said to Brenda, do you know what? Something's landed here. And I had that feeling. When I came back next few days later, I went with a photograph of the landing site with the policeman in Georgina Bruni's book. There was a bit in the magazine article at the time. I think it was in the UFO magazine. Brought that down. I comparisoned that in the background with the background of what's there. The trees matched the site. The background, the light coming through the trees, exactly the same. The bareness, this is what is another strange thing about the whole forest was tall, of bracken everywhere. But this area 1 where we've said area was staked off was bare.
The whole area was the same, it had no...
That hadn't grown anything as tall either. So radiation or somewhere where they actually washed off radiation, perhaps something they picked up. But this area was actually staked in 4 stakes. It's like a survey, it's been a survey area, surveyed. They're in a 4, 46 feet across from one stake to the other, one side to the other. And they're near enough northeast, southwest, so they're all in that direction. The interesting thing is though, in the middle of this lot, what I could pick up with divining rods, there's places 3 points where they crossed. And also a central point in the centre of this. I picked a triangular shape. And that was near enough 14 foot across from one point to the other.
What sort of shape of triangle was it? A long
it was triangle. It was really. It was like it's fat. It was more like the markings were really sort of equal to each other, so it indicated a triangular craft. So there was another set I found as well, a smaller set of feet mark tripods, like leg marks, smaller, about 10 foot in triangle shape. Next door. This is 10
feet away, 20 feet away?
Very near. Say from that triangle to this one, perhaps 5 foot, no further. They're quite close. They landed, whatever it was, it must have been landed in a pair or something landed beside it. So there was a massive scrape coming down, facing into the landing area. The stakes, which are in the photograph in Georgina Bruni's book with the policeman, tied in with my rods that crossed on the area 1. They crossed on these points and they marked them with the stakes, and I stepped back, took photographs, and that married up straight with the same area in the photographs back in 1980. And there's a tree on the in the photographs. There's a tree on the left-hand side which has got like a fork with one branch curling round. That married that to it was one of the trees, exactly the same spot. And actually, and also on the tree facing the landing site where Holt done a sample, 3'6" up, there was a sap bursting out, and above that was an old hack mark, and you can still see the old hack mark. You can see the groove where it had been cut with an axe, and below that was this sap, and it was all. This is the sap sample that Holt was talking about. We'll take a sample of that, you know.
This is mentioned on the tape.
It's mentioned on the tape, And so when you're in that position, then you mentioned about, let's make that point 1. Well, point 1, and now Woodbridge Base was over there to me where I was standing. Point 1 was on that stake there. Point 2 was over there, and point 3 was about there. So you're actually where you're standing with the tree. And that's all tied in with the measurements on his tape. And Woodbridge Base is just over there.
What other kind of data did you get from that?
Radiation as well. I picked up radiation. I borrowed a guide counter, and the tree, the base, I picked the highest radiation facing into the landing site, was only about 6 inches, 4 inches, 6 inches from the bottom of the base of the tree. Facing the landing site was the highest radiation. The guide counter was not calibrated properly, but it was picking up radiation. That was picking up radiation, and the actual
on a relative scale.
On a relative, it was
background radiation.
Yes, I tried it on all the other places in the forest. Came into the forest, tried it on the trees, barely hardly move, and you could hear a little bit through crackles. But when I got into area 1 and these areas, that was picking up really, really strong. And when I got to the tree, it went off the needle. The needle went off the dial. It went right off. So when I got to this part of the tree, and I had my friend who I worked with, he came down, Ron, and he was with me and he filmed it. It was on video, I got it on video, and he was saying, "Pete, you've got something here," and he was really excited by seeing the thing going off the needle. He couldn't believe it.
Where else was the radiation?
On the 3 landing feet mark, you can pick them up, and also in the centre. There's a radiation picking up on there.
And on any other trees?
I tried the other trees. I didn't get anything strong from, because they were further away. But the one that had the scrape coming down it, they had most radiation on it. So it's either came down, caught it as it's coming into land, or landed.
So do you get any other information about the way the forest was laid out? Or?
Yes, is also very noticeable was the big heavy tyre marks leading away from area 1. There's the big heavy vehicle been in there. There's also 2 trees that have been cut down, fell away from the area. You can see the way it's notched, because I'm quite up with all the forestry and the cutting, because we've felled trees themselves, and they're felled in the direction of away from the area, so the landing site. So this tree was felled away, and also there's another tree cut off. And I think this is for so they could take this craft, pick it up, and put it onto a low loader, because something there as heavy has gone from the area 1 throughout the forest, then back onto the track, and then most probably took it back onto the base and got it onto the plane.
Taken from area 1 into...
Yeah, and down Eastgate, into the main road. Because I think Brenda was saying there was actually at the time some men were checking for radiation down Eastgate, the road, going down to Eastgate, the track. So I expect this craft was washed off with, you know, if it's got radiation, they must probably wash the craft off before moving it on.
And have you heard of any other vehicles that landed near there at the time?
The other interesting thing is, I think it ties in a bit with the dog walker who saw that object in the ground. They may have retrieved it from that position, because Brenda mentioned about the helicopter. They may have brought it over to area 1. This may have been something belonging to this craft, because I think from Bentwaters there was, people saw from the tower, the tower was quite crowded. They were up in this lookout tower, and they think about 3 triangular craft over the forest between Bentwaters and Woodbridge, and they saw one coming down, and there was 2 others sort of like moving around there, but one actually landed in the trees, so it came down in the trees. So this might be the same object. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't, but it came in that direction, it landed, and this is where they're watching it, and this seemed to all tie in with.
So is this a second object in addition to the ones which have landed?
Well, the one that landed in area 1, I'm sure if the flight path it came in on, now there was another piece of information that Brenda at the time had, and she said that there was a personnel that worked on the base, and he stated in his little statement saying it was no UFO that landed. He said it was an advanced military craft. It got into difficulties. It was on manoeuvres and got into difficulties. They had 2 men as a 2-man craft. It had difficulties. It came into land, but hit the lights, the runway lights, got damaged, and they had to bring it down and land it in the trees. So they came down the tree. So maybe what came in area 1 was an advanced military craft. If so, this ties in with a lot of events that happened afterwards. I mean, I think 2 hours into the event, this 141, I think it was a Galaxy, came into land. Personnel went into the forest where they tried to fix it. They couldn't fix it, or came to retrieve it. So this thing was perhaps, and that was loaded onto this plane and took to Germany. So that's what it was said in the statement.
That would imply that whatever this object is, the base had a foreknowledge of
definitely
the
they're ready for it, and I think there was certainly quite an important event happened. I think just before that, they were ready for it, and they might have been knowing it got into difficulties. That this craft, I think, they had a drone craft, which is this disc craft. I think suspended under these. So one operated the main craft, and the other personnel operated this disc type of reconnaissance craft that they can send down, either spy through, go through the cloud layer, and then whisk about.
What evidence do you have to?
Well, the interesting bit about it is that in 1981, somebody was down the forest there, and they saw a triangular craft hovering over top of a tree. It matched the same description as the one that landed in Rendlesham, and underneath that was suspended a blue disc. A blue disc suspended. It wasn't attached, but it just suspended underneath the craft, and they're above the tree level. So that was quite a massive craft. It sounds around the same size that came down in the forest. Now that, I put two and two together in my mind, and I think so. I draw the line from Colonel Holt's old area across the runway lights to Area 1. So in the line, it does tie up with all the whole lot through, but Colonel Holt's area with this thing that was sticking in the ground, silver disc, that was a silver thing or a missile looking thing. It could have been a disc craft. They could have jettisoned this, they got into difficulties, they had to jettison their pod craft, carry on, so they jettisoned that, they might have got difficulties, they couldn't control it, jettisoned that, continued on, may have hit the lights as they're coming in, then landed in the forest. As it was an advanced craft, they couldn't land it on the base because they had been seen by other personnel. I think they kept it discreet. They dropped it in the trees, trying to fix it.
So this is the second night.
It ties in with this seems to tie in. I don't think like it's the first and second. It seems to be what happened with Barrows that saw the lights in the forest and went out there the first night. I mean, he went to this craft, and this picture in Georgina Bruni's book is the same area, and it's the same area that Holt went to. Now, what is Holt doing out in Area 1 if he's meant to be down the other place to checking it out? So this seems to be tying in with something, a big event happening in that area. The two nights seem to be mingling in together. It doesn't seem to be clear, really, that with the event. I mean, Penniston and Barrows, and this is the one they said they saw. Penniston said they saw the triangular cross sitting on tripod legs, the symbols on the side of it. He said that rose and slightly took off, and then wandered through the trees and took off again. This is too uncanny. In the Holt's tape, you can actually hear a car hooting nearby. And Brenda was saying that Barrows wanted to get on the scene. He wanted to come in there. They didn't want personnel in there at the time, because when Holt was checking it out, there was a thing coming on the radio just saying, you know, so two other personnel want to come in there. No, we don't want them here at the moment. We don't want them here. So that, you know, so they didn't want them in. But Brenda was saying that Barrows was trying to come back. He wanted to come visit. So this seems to be something that's that they knew and didn't seem to be concerned about. They knew it was advanced craft of some sort.
Right. And then we have things which happen to the present day, but we'll discuss with that.
Yes.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, around 55 minutes, so I could do a change if you want to do some more stuff.
That'll do for the UFO side of things.
Yeah.
And then we can get you talking about...
I mean, I didn't do the Bumsall firing range and the army guy who saw some things land. They saw them land outside the back gate. You see, a craft landed outside the back gate.
About 5 minutes, we're still running.
Okay.
You're in a little bit closer, Miles, but to me, to the right. That's right.
So what about other events has happened?
Around the same time, there was two TA Army personnel camping with a load of cadets in the forest at Brumswell, not far from the back gate entrance of the base. And they said they saw a bright light come over the forest. It came down and landed near the back gate, and right fairly near. They said they went out and had a look to see what it was. Where they actually saw it take off again before they actually went to investigate. By the way, it took off again. And then he said it went off down this track, a ride away from the base in the northerly direction, followed the track below tree level, and he said it went down, heading to where Area 1 is, and when it got to Area 1, it just shot up in the sky, gone. So he may have been hanging, or this craft may have been hanging about for the other one in Area 1. This ties in with the other triangular craft that three craft have seen from the towers at about the same time. So, but they saw this light land and it took off again, and he described that they went back in the morning.
Like?
He said it was a bright white light. He said he couldn't see any description of what shape it was. He said it was really bright light. And he said it took off and went down the track and what I described. He said he went to have a look after it had taken off in the dark. They got to the back gate and there was army personnel came out and met them. They had all their camouflage stuff on, but they had personnel, I think 9mm or something guns. It may have been a different size gun, but they had guns cocked, and then they told to leave the area, which they did. He said next morning we went back to have a look, see where this craft had come down, and he said they saw 3 triangular feet mark just on about 50 yards from the edge of the road on the left hand side of the back gate. And
this is a different area?
This is a different area, but on the same side of the perimeter fence, on the same side as Area 1, not far away from each other. And he said the actual impressions where these feet had landed on the craft, the sand had melted as smooth as glass. He actually noticed that. That's what stuck in his mind. He said, I looked at these landing site feet mark and they're melted as smooth as glass. And that's it. And there is a site still there today. You can see there's a bare patch. We've actually gone over with vinyl rods and actually picked up, they crossed, and you pick up these feet marks, the same size as what's in Area 1. Like 14
of course,
feet.
we have to explain to people that there was a hurricane in 1987.
Yeah, the hurricane. Yeah, it's definitely a hurricane.
So what happened to the evidence or the locations?
Some of the trees were knocked down, blown down, but the Area 1 was still standing. The trees in Area 1 hadn't been really touched. So that really was a bonus, because that evidence still stand there. That hadn't been.
And that was how you were able to get radiation detections?
Yeah, and also locate the area and get the picture of the place and to tie it in with the picture in the book. So the story of the radiation and when they took photographs and the film was fogged doesn't seem to tally. I mean, if they...
Whose film was fogged?
Well, it was... didn't Penniston take some photographs? I think it was Penniston took some photographs, and they said all the films come out fogged. They didn't come out. But strange that the ones with the policemen did as well. But in the photograph, another picture that Georgina sent me through was, I wanted another picture which hasn't got the policemen, but it's got a lit up background. So she emailed me that photograph, and it's got a bright light shining, and it's a light all shining strictly down. It's a light all. So they've got actually light alls. Portable generator. It's a Briggs and Stratton engine with 2 mercury vapor lights on with a sheet of metal over it and that sort of thing. They drag it. It's quite a big thing. It takes some pull, and you want a fairly big truck to bring them into the woods. But they got them in there. This thing was running on this photograph. You can see one stage where the policeman was standing, that was off. But when another shot, and the light alls on, illuminate the area. I suppose they had the light alls turned off because they couldn't talk. I suppose they wanted to talk about it, and they had just. But that was taken in the same area. So they had light alls in there. So they must have been prepared, or they knew this job was going to take some time.
This is the area where the dog walker came up, the one who saw the missile thing in the forest over here, where we're going shortly. And this is also the place where Colonel Holt saw his lights through there. This is the post here which says UFO Trail. And you've got to remember that in 1980, none of the trees were like this then. We had the great big huge tall pine trees, the tall thin pine trees, and this track wasn't here in 1980. You just walked straight through the trees, and there was bramble bushes, stinger nettles, loads of gorse bushes, bracken, and down here. And now if we go this way, this is a trail that the forestry have made to go into the area where Colonel Holt saw the lights, and we call it Colonel Holt's area. But this is also the place, as I said before, where the dog walker, the gentleman, saw this missile being covered up by, I'll say missile because at the moment we don't really know what it was, covered up by a tarpaulin. But he didn't actually come on this track, he came in through there. Because the trees, you could see through the trees then because they were tall, he came actually through there and saw the thing in the crater here, where we're now going. And if to the right is where the dog walker would have been. He would have come through the trees here and just made his way through here, and he would have stood over there watching these guys here. the firemen here covering up whatever it was, the silver object which was in the ground. And this is the place where Colonel Holt would have come, also to see lights in the sky, or lights hovering. Colonel Holt has never ever once said that was a craft or a UFO. He's always said he didn't know what it was, and all he saw was lights. There's also another story which goes with this. Over here, about 4 or 5 years ago, I did a lecture in here, and there was about 30 to 40 people in here, and there might have been a lot more. And I was standing here. I know this is where I was standing because there's a dip here, and my dog had dug holes here anyway. And there was another lady standing beside me here. We'd taken photographs, and I was doing the lecture, and there was definitely no tree here then. And about a week later, I came here with a party of people, brought them in, and there was a tree stood here, and it was about 6 foot high. It was a little taller than what I was, and I said to the people, oh, there's a tree there. There definitely wasn't a tree here about a week ago. So I went down to the forestry, and I got Richard, who was the forestry officer then, and I told him about the tree because he was here at the lecture with us. And I said to him, come and see. So he came up to see, and he said, well, it must have been there. That's a 6-year-old tree. And I said, no. I said, it definitely was not there when I done the lecture last week. And he said, well, it must have been. I said, well, it wasn't, because I've got photographs. I said, of it not being there. And I'd also took photographs then later of it being here. And Mason was beside the tree, and he'd got a white light right on top of his head, standing beside the tree.
And who's Mason?
My dog. Sorry, Mason's my dog. Yeah. And anyway, off we went, and he said, well, I'm telling you, it's a 6-year-old tree, and it's been there for 6 years. And so off he went, and then when I came back again a week or so later, the tree had gone. It wasn't there. So I went down and got Richard again, and I said, the tree isn't there now. And he said, of course it is. I said, it isn't. I said, it honestly isn't there. So he said, are you telling me? He said, the ETs planted it and then pulled it up again. And I said, well, I don't know what happened, but it's not there. So he came back with me, and when we came back and had a look, it definitely wasn't there. The tree wasn't there. But there was nowhere and no way could it have been pulled up, cut down or anything, because there was no marks on the ground. There was nothing.
Can you show us on the ground where this would have been?
It was just here, just around about here. It was just there because I was standing there, so it was just about here. That hole down there is my dogs, and those holes over there are my dogs. They used to scrape the earth up to find stones. But that's where it was, and I know that's where I was standing. And as you can see, nothing's ever really grown in here. Up until about 2 years ago, this whole complete place was just dead, absolutely dead.
That's good. That's good. I think that was usable. We'll do the walkthrough shot. This will be a lot easier now because you can just go blah blah blah. You know, wave your hands, point a little bit, and we'll walk with you from the behind, so we don't have to see.
Okay.
We're just going to do the walkthrough for cut shots.
And then I think it's area 1 after this.
Okay.
Or do we want to go to the area where you get a lot of the ET stuff? Is that closer? What do you reckon?
I don't know.
It's the track there. We had that one across.
No, it's too far away.
Too away. You'll be losing the light, won't you?
Yeah, we do area 1.
Area 1, I reckon you'll be able to. We can probably get back up there.
Yeah.
The only thing while we hesitate is, oh, is it?
If you go back up.
Yeah.
What we'll do is wait for this kiddie to come past and then we'll go on.
Okay.
Pointing down, that's fine. And yeah, if you want to sort of have a look up now, you can.
Right.
Do you want to do that one again? Don't look at the camera is probably the best thing. Just keep looking down there, and then just turn to the side and naturally start to walk. That'll be fine then.
All right. Okay.
So you're looking. I'm going to pan around you a little bit, looking at your hand and pulling back, and now you can go, and that's fine. And good walk up, good pace. I can follow you. That's fine. And if you want to slow a little bit and then point a little bit, okay, and point to the end. That's it. Okay, and take us to the UFO trail thing if you want. Fine. Good pace again. And I'll let you go ahead a little bit, and you can just sort of veer off right down to the area where it is. That's great. Yeah, I'm going to let you go in. Keep going in. That's great. Okay, that's good. Thanks.
Right.
Don't seem so heavy, the stuff. Ah, he's got yeah, he's got the gear, hasn't he? Of course he has. Yeah, they normally thin out a row actually, so every so many they'll thin them out. I think some of these are marked to come out, but they haven't done anything here. Right. No, we're lucky. They were flying around earlier. I thought, oh no, they're not start buzzing. There was a Chinook come out, not Chinook. The old Apache came round and then disappeared again. I thought, oh, thank God for that. Brenda had a weird experience the other night down here, track 10, yeah. Walking up the track. She said, got to, hang on, who is this? Where'd it go? No signal, it's not going. Oh, yes, it. You can go anywhere. You feel the cold. They try and actually things come into you. You feel the coldness around you, and they're actually there. You can feel them. But I always just say, I can feel you around us, and that feels good, you know. And that's all right. They don't seem to want to do anything nasty to you. They seem to be curious than anything. Seem to be studied. You get the feeling of being studied all the time, studying, and also they like to try and be one step ahead of you all the time. With anything you're down there, they seem to just be ahead of you all the time. But they seem to want your company down there. They want you down here. But there's certain parts of the forest. Now it's interesting. I've got drawn. Now I met this other girl comes down here with Vicky. She's very psychic, and we get on well together. We're really good. Get on together. You know, we're the same. We sort of gel with everything. Yeah. And she get drawn to the same trees I got drawn to, same areas. And I said, weird. She said, oh, I've got drawn to the same place here. I said, I don't know. It's just something. It's like you've got drawn these destiny. You know, you've got to be these places. But we've been. Right. Oh yeah, that was strange, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Little camera. I watch take pictures of it. I can go to shot on that. Yeah. Your camera that takes the stills. It's an old-fashioned, old type of style, but it takes good pictures, I suppose. Quality. Yeah. That's, yeah. So a film you got to send off to develop?
Yeah. It was winding people up.
Yeah.
Saying it's like a latest invention.
Well, no, yeah, I know that. I don't know. See why Matthew was taking.
It's stuck. It's definitely on film.
Yeah. No. Of course it's right. Yeah. It's right. Yeah. You can blow that up resolution in.
It's the lens, camera.
The important thing, yeah. No, the time it'll begin losing your light and stuff. I think if you get another night when it's just clear and it's still, you'd be better off of filming when it's not so windy. You don't get the back.
Tentacles.
Yeah, we did on one of them, on the smaller one.
Well, that has got sort of like tentacles. You're describing it as like tentacles coming out underneath it, coming down around the edges. Oops, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's.
Just describe that a second. Just pointed it a little bit.
That was track 10, wasn't it?
Yeah, we saw that at track 10. I came at track 10. That was in November 2000. Came over the top. It's just one of the craft that we've seen.
Are you wearing a mic?
I'm wearing the mic. Do you?
We saw last week over the contact area, and we saw that little one in the contact area, what we call the contact area, and that's the triangle that went over. And that little one, he was like that, how we saw him first, and then he changed into a shape like that, sort of an orangey shape. That was on 23rd of July at 3:30 AM in the morning.
Cool.
And this is what I was telling you about Tate, that one which we saw standing beside Tate. Yeah, there's Tate. This one there in the mist, and there's some more coming through here. There's a blown up one of it coming through.
You can really see the eyes there, can't you?
Yeah, I'll see if I can find my little one for you.
Oh, there's your space nose cone.
Yeah.
The space shuttle. That's
kind of hot there too. Right, just see if I can find the little one to share with. Yeah, maybe he's in here somewhere. Oh, there he is. I've got a big picture of him, but here's the little picture of him. Come out. Oh, there's the big picture of him. And Miles took it last. This is the little one. He came out of a white light.
Oh my God.
There he is on the photo. There. And on this one, this one, that's an orb. Just take it out. That's an orb, and there is one there. Little face, a little body, and he's holding a little light. See it?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And that was visible when you took the photograph as well?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. That's the one which isn't blown up. There. And we guess that's how they travel. they're the sort of photos we get down here, the sort of things we get down here.
Things to get hold of.
Well, the only one to get anything from is your man Bob.
Surplus stores or something, army surplus stores and
Army surplus stores.
no.
Probably find every bloody valve on it that's burnt out.
Oh yeah. The one I borrowed from last off here, it picked up, but it had no sensor on to it very well. It wasn't very good, but it picked up the radiation, no? See if I can pick them up. They should be able to pick up the old feet mark still here. It's not far off where it was. That's the tree it had to scrape down at. Let's see if we can still pick up the old radiation here. Yeah, look, they are. They're crossing on that point there. That one isn't far out there. That's crossing on that point. The other foot was over here.
Where's the other one? The other...
That's a tree. That's the one that scrape on it.
This one?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think you'll find anything there because that thing's not accurate enough. See, that's crossing there. So that is that one. And then there must be another third.
It's there somewhere.
Yeah, hang on. You'll pick it up. You still pick them up, the rods, I think. There you go. Where's the other one I put in there? Oh, there. Yeah?
But that was the other one, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, in far out. I put it here. This is where I picked up, yeah. In far out. So you still pick up the actual... That's where I picked the highest radiation. It was on this edge here. Right here, but they've cut the tree bit where it was really high radiation. It was out here. Yeah. But I don't think that's picking anything up. This is the actual area here. But the interesting thing, when they cut through the segment, this part of the tree, the pitch was all black, facing into this landing area. It's all black, all the way here. It's all, where it's been heated and some sort. But I dare say you've had a sensitive enough Geiger counter, you'd pick it up.
Well, the Geiger counter's dead.
I'll tell you what, the actual rods are very, very, very sensitive to even the areas, landing feet marks. I mean, what is this one across here still? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's a bit 10 across there. It's a bit 14. Here's some of the things we get down the forest. That's kind of hope we interviewed them in the control tower at Bent Waters. And this is an ET thing on video going across in front of the camera. That's holding up like a sample case or something that drifted across in front of the camera. Then I've got the rods flying about there. There's one here going down into the bracken, and they've got like a spirally wing, and they sort of fly through the air like cuttlefish swim through water. Oscillating wings. That's just some of the things we get down here. And this is all on infrared. Just have a look, see if we can find. I'm just going to put a picture of the landing site so we can actually find a. Right. Right, here we are. Yeah. That's one of Steve's maps I've drawn of the. Showing it left. He said turn. That's East Gate, Woodbridge. Turn left 3/4 of a mile on the left-hand side. So you turn left 3/4 of a mile. And then there's the road. This is the black line is indicating the road. Coming down the track, which is the one we just walked down. Come down into the track there, and in the forest on the left-hand side on here. And this is where you put the cross. This is the track we just walked into, the area. So that indicating this actually tallies up with the what he actually was telling Brenda at the time, that a lot of the people were, you know, going in the other direction and going down track 12. But this is a picture of Area 1, 1980. This is with the floodlight, the light all on. The tree is a good giveaway. This tree with the V, with the branch going around. This is the tree. It was in the landing. One had a scrape on it. This is in this is taken, I think, 2002. I got the date on there, 2005, but 2002. But the same tree here with the branches. If I just hold it, you can see, and the stakes actually in the same position where the actual I picked up with the radiation.
The stakes are, sorry.
So there's one here in the foreground. There's no one there, and there's one over there. So this would have been 0.1, and that should be 2, and that's 3. And that's the same as this one in the picture. There's the one in there, and there. And this is a good match. You can see the light coming through the trees in the background, the same as that one. The bracken, very similar. It hasn't grown any at all there. It's grown in the background there. And everything just points to it. The information on that tree is the same. And the base is to this side, which is, in comparison, if you swung round, this tree here, the main one with the scrape on it, was this tree here with the Geiger counters on now. And you've got the other stumps, a further one behind, which is over there. So if you bring yourself this way a bit more, and then come in line with, now you can see the line, the background there with the trees and the sun going down, would have been, this trees all been either side through the forest here going down. There was a track running parallel to this, a heavy like wheel marks going out of this forest. It was a low loader or something. There's a tree, must have been, it was a cut off tree thing cut off here, and another one just behind you there. That stump was felled away. So whatever that was here, they must have lifted it onto the low loader, put it onto this lorry, then took it out the forest, because the lorry must have came in this way, got to the craft, loaded it on, took it through the trees, and so the track went right through to onto the main built-up road, back along the road, along onto the main road, and then into the base, down East Gate, through the East Gate, and onto the base. Then loaded up on the plane and took away.
And the base is literally, if you
yeah,
explain to us, the base is just literally over there.
And if I point out the points, you know, Holt said nearest the Woodbridge base. Let's make that one nearest to Woodbridge base. So that's, say that's 0.1. So let's go clockwise. So you went clockwise, 0.2, and then 0.3 would be just about where your foot is. So that's 0.2, and between 0.2 and 3, which is about here. This is the one. It's about there. Between 0.2 and 3 was the pine tree with the mark 3'6" up. That's facing into the landing site. Had a massive scrape coming down. There was an old wound, could have been a forester's hack mark. They used to test the trees for how healthy they were. They just take the bark off. Now that's what Holt said at the time. He said it looks a bit old, but underneath that was a sap that oozed out. And I have got a picture of it there somewhere. I'll just have a hunt for you. But that is the describing the area there. I'll just see if I can find it. It might be a clearer picture here of. Yeah.
Can we go to area 2?
That's it. Okay. Right. This is the tree here with the scrape gun. That's this big old scrape that's coming down the tree. That's Ron, who's worked with me, and he's just pointing to the tree with the scrape facing to the landing site. Is that another stump? And this is at the base of the tree. Now this is a sap which Holt took a sample of, and above that was a hack mark. We can see it's an indentation of the bark that's healed over now, but you can still see the mark fairly visible actually in the tree where it's been. And this is the one that Holt remarked about. This looks old, but. And then he's talked about the sap oozing out, and they took a sample of that. And that 3 foot, that was exactly 3'6" up. And this is of Ron standing in area 1 where it is now, and that's back then, 2002.
And that would have been
Just straight up across there, and you'll see the background to that. So that's the light coming through, sun setting in the background, very similar. Okay.
That's good. Yeah.
Good.
Good illustration shots actually, because
You can actually see, and then the background you can still see these trees, and these were them ones are there. It was like that all over here, big massive trees.
Go down then, just like
Well, I don't know why did they clear this area. It seems very uncanny, It's like it's like we got too near. And well, when this got put out on the Anglia, was it Anglia Television, Brenda? That was Tim Royce. He'd done an article when he came in here, and we said, "Well, call it Area 1." He says, "Well, this is known as Area 1," and of course that went on telly, and that went out, and it wasn't long after that this things started moving a bit, and then the trees started coming down. So they may have perhaps actually got too near the truth. Well, they didn't realise they actually there. Tim didn't realise that this is actually a landing spot. We said this is where something landed, and he actually done a good a view. He actually zoomed in on the guard hut through the fence over there, and it brought it right into the picture. Which makes it very obvious that there's something happened over this side of the forest. Which it ties in with the Holt, and then we heard the Jeep, and on Holt's tape, the Jeep coming into the tape, you can hear the hooting in the background, and they were just off one of these tracks here, so they may have been coming up here, may have been just sitting on the track in here and want to come in the forest, so they didn't want them in the area at the time. This is the place where Penniston and Barrows first came, and they saw the craft sitting on the ground. It was the first night. And then Holt was called out the second night saying, "It's back, sir," and it's back. And this is when he comes to investigate with the Geiger counter and come to see where this thing had landed. Seems rather strange to come to the same area again. After the 2 nights, it seems like it ties in with the 1 night. And he was checking for radiation. He wasn't coming there just for looking where the craft is. He didn't seem to be worried where the craft was. He was just checking out the area for radiation. And they didn't seem to be very surprised, what they found, because we're now coming into the landing area. It seemed like they were really prepared and knew what it was, knew where it was. So it sounds like they're coming to the first night's incident, checking it out. So the tape is misleading how they say it's the second night. I think there's a lot ties in with the first night, and I think this is just another one of the fabrications, cover-ups, that's going on here. There's a lot of truth. I mean, if they're going to bring advanced craft, they're not going to land it further down the field. They want to be near the base, somewhere near they can recover it, somewhere that can be hidden in the trees. If they don't want to be seen, they can take it away, cover it up, put it into a lorry, and then take it, put it onto the base, and fly it out. So that is a good place to land, because I don't think even personnel were allowed to see these technology craft. It's too top secret. So that is a more discreet thing to do. Drop it down, bring it in here, try to fix it. They couldn't fix it, so they took it away. I mean, saying it take off again and went away, I mean, if it was an alien craft, there'd have been a high alert on, and the base would have been, nobody seemed to be worried about what went on here. They just said, oh, it just took off again, there's no defence significance. Well, if that had been advanced technology craft from another planet or from another civilization, I'm sure they'd have been very concerned about being invaded nearby. So this, has another area which, I think there's a lot of evidence pointing to that something had landed here, and perhaps the truth will come out a bit, but there's a lot of people have seen things happen here, and the map has been drawn here of the area where it had landed, and personnel have seen things over here. So I think this definitely something that happened here, and an English policeman who were on this point here has been here, and they deny actually where they've been. They don't say exactly. There's no clear indication. They should know where they've been, where they've gone. They should have noted it. And if nobody knows where the actual landing site is, it seems rather, we've found it and it's there, so easy to find. And it's, with the information we've got, the military should have known about it. Okay. So he's been abducted, I think. This is interesting, yeah. You remember Steve Roberts from the base, the security guard? Yeah. He took a very good interest and he studied this very long. I was showing the trees and everything, the marks, and I had this picture. And when I showed him, he looked through the book and he looked at this, and he was very fascinated because I had drawn a picture of this showing this craft growing, and that's 6 foot across or 2 meters wide. Them things, you can see where they've gone through the trees somewhere. And he studied this very long while. He looked at that, like he recognised that and as some sort. So that was interesting. And the reaction I got, and the time he took on looking at this picture, because he was flicking through it, but when he saw that, seemed to sort of like catch his eye. Oh, that's Brenda and that's Steve Roberts. And that's when he came down one day. There's one of the security guards. Brenda knew, didn't you, Brenda? Yeah. Yeah, and this is Colin Coffey and me at the Co-op Fete in 1983. And this is Colin Coffey, who was security on the base. I head of security control. And we were doing a sort of Wild West show. We used to be in the we had a lot of Americans in our Wild West shows we used to do for fetes and that. And that's when we at Co-op Fete in Ipswich that was. More things in the forest. This is going to Area 1 from the track, and this is the track leading out. This is coming in from that direction, coming into Area 1. That's Brenda with her mouse, and that's fairly when we first found the place. And that's just they're running. There's a track actually coming out here, heavy tarmac running through from this bit, leading out. And this is just shortly after the trees are felled in Area 1. That's Ron standing where the policeman was standing. And as you can see, the same trees, if you pan round, you get a bit more of the indication than what was that. That was the trees now look still standing. That ties in with the trees. So I'll just move this back again. Just perhaps get a shot of that.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. The space shuttle for that. It marries up the space shuttle. This is Brenda's photograph, and I put it on a piece of paper and then drawed the lines because I knew that the cone shape came in at this angle, so I knew it came to a point somewhere along there. So I just put a little round nose to it, and then followed these lines around a bit, added the tiles in, just added a bit where I could go, just count them in sort of that way, just go an indication of the shape of it. Then I looked on the internet and actually found the actual space shuttle nose cone. You can see it actually been on the seabed by the runs of the material that had been in the water. It's been in salt water, and I think the actual nose cone was sitting more likely that direction on the riverbed, you know, on that sort of thing there, on the water, on the bottom of the seabed. That angle, you can see the runs. So it was on the actual bed of the river or on the sea, and we covered it the sea. Let's get the eye going to counting as well. I've got to go 10 miles, isn't it? Yeah. Just so it went off the needle, can't you? Just so it went off the needle.